Chapter 1. Rain Country, Grey Cloud Town, Ling Family. The moon was high in the sky. Ling Han spent a whole 10 seconds before he could finally confirm that he had indeed reincarnated and been reborn. For a powerful warrior of heaven tier, spending 10 seconds to confirm something was absolutely inconceivable, but it also proved how inconceivable what had happened to him was. In his previous life, he stood at the pinnacle of martial arts and had unprecedented achievements in the field of alchemy. The three-fire guide technique he created caused a revolution in the world of alchemy, and he was honored as the Alchemy Emperor. But he was not satisfied, and wanted to go one step further to reach the legendary Shattering Void tier, shatter the void, and become immortal. For this, he visited countless ancient sites, and finally entered Black Blood Valley. After experiencing many dangers, he found a mysterious ancient tower. It did not disappoint him. Golden characters appeared on the ancient tower. It was a supreme cultivation technique called Indestructible Heaven Scroll. When cultivated to the highest level, the body would be indestructible, coexisting with heaven and earth, and living as long as the sun and moon. But even with Ling Han's heaven-tier cultivation in martial art, he still felt that this indestructible heaven scroll was cryptic and difficult to understand, as if it was a heavenly book, and he had no clue. He forcibly memorized this cultivation technique, and was about to study the ancient tower, when the ancient tower shook slightly and released an immeasurable divine light, instantly shattering his physical body. But strangely, his soul actually did not dissipate, and fell into a state where he was half awake, half dreaming, which lasted for 10,000 years. In these 10,000 years, his soul was constantly studying the indestructible heaven scroll. Other than this, he could do nothing else. After 10,000 years, he finally comprehended the first level of this cultivation technique. A powerful warrior of heaven tier spent 10,000 years to comprehend the first level of a cultivation technique. What kind of concept was that? One had to know that heaven tier warriors usually had a lifespan of less than 1,000 years. Normally, no one in the world could successfully cultivate this indestructible heaven scroll, because they would die of old age before even starting. But Ling Han mastered the first level of the indestructible heaven scroll in this strange way, and then he suddenly came back to life, reincarnating into the body of a 16-year-old youth also called Ling Han. Inconceivable. No matter what happened, I'm alive again. Although this body's cultivation level is only at the second layer of body refining tier, and could not be any more useless, but I was once a powerful warrior of the heaven tier, and stood at the peak of martial art. I am also a grandmaster alchemist. If my talent is lacking, I will use alchemical pills to make up for it. I do not believe that I cannot return to the peak. Moreover, I can finally cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll. This is a supreme cultivation technique, and it might not even be from the mortal realm, but from the legendary immortal realm. Otherwise, how could it possibly take me 10,000 years to comprehend the first level of this cultivation technique? In this life, I will definitely surpass my predecessors and become a god. Also, what's going on with this body? I'm only 16 years old and I've only reached body refining level 2. Is it because the martial art of today is too weak? Boom! Countless memories surged into his mind. These were memories that belonged to the other Ling Han, the original owner of this body. And in this process, the two completely different people also fused together, becoming inseparable. I understand. Ling Han nodded in his mind. The reason why he was only at the second layer of body refining tier was because his spirit base was too weak. To become a martial artist, there was a prerequisite, and that was to have a spirit base. Only with a spirit base could one absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, refine one's body, and transform it into origin power. Some spirit bases absorb spiritual chi quickly, while others absorb it slowly. Thus, spirit bases were divided into 4 major levels: heaven, earth, black, and yellow. Each major level was further divided into 3 minor levels: high, medium, and low. Heaven grade high level was the best, and yellow grade low level was the worst. the key to determining the quality of a spirit base was its purity. The purer it was, the better it was. However, Ling Han's spirit base was a combination of the 5 elements, and it was the most chaotic. In the world of martial art, this was the worst spirit base, and it could barely be considered as a yellow grade low level. Thus, he was only 16 years old, yet he had only reached body refining tier 2. His peers had already reached body refining tier 4 or 5. In his previous life, Ling Han had the heaven spirit base, and it was even the heaven grade high level 9 yang fire spirit base. Coupled with his unparalleled talent in alchemy, and using alchemy to supplement his martial arts, he had only used 200 years to reach heaven realm. This was an unprecedented record. 5 elements mixed spirit base, this is the worst spirit base. No wonder my predecessor only had the cultivation of body refining tier 2 despite his hard work. To me, although the 5 elements mixed spirit base is a little troublesome, with the help of alchemy, I will definitely be able to return to the peak in at most 400 years. Ling Han exclaimed in his heart, and his face revealed a shocked expression of disbelief. He was stunned for a good while before he used his powerful soul force to look at the spirit base in his dantian. His shocked expression immediately turned into ecstasy. This is not the 5 elements mixed spirit base. The 5 elements are completely balanced and formed a Tao lotus. This is the 5 elements chaos lotus, the best of the best. It is even rarer than the 9 yang fire spirit base, and can be called a god-grade spirit base. My predecessor's cultivation was slow because god-grade spirit bases require specialized cultivation techniques to be able to unleash their true power. And I just happen to have mastered the 5 elements heaven grade art that is compatible with the 5 elements chaos lotus. 100 years, no, I only need 50 years, and I will be able to reach heaven realm again. Even with Ling Han's heaven realm cultivation in his previous life, he could not help but reveal an expression of joy. Spirit bases were destined at birth, and could not be changed later on. In his previous life, in order to break through the void and become a god, he had visited countless ancient sites and obtained a large number of cultivation techniques and secret arts. The 5 elements heaven grade art was one of them. In his previous life, he stood at the peak of martial art. In this life, he would once again create glory and create an immortal legend. How did my predecessor die? Ling Han rummaged through his memories, and very soon, he revealed an angry expression. His predecessor was the only son of the clan head of the Ling family, Ling Dongxing. His mother and grandparents had passed away very early on. And the Ling family was a clan of martial art. Every member of the clan practiced martial arts, and they also respected martial arts. For example, the reason why Ling Dongxing could sit on the position of clan head was because he was the strongest and had fought his way through. But because of the problem with Ling Han's spirit base, he was seen as trash since he was young, and suffered a lot of disdain. In order to fight for a bright future for his son, Ling Dongxing reached an agreement with Huyang University. Huyang University would take Ling Han as a disciple and train him with all its might. In exchange, Ling Dongxing would enter the Purple Light Earth Valley and search for an item that Huyang University had lost a long time ago. Huyang University was established by the Imperial Court of Rain Country and had countless resources. If they trained him with all their might, even the most useless person would be able to reach Poly Tier. But the people from Huyang University were not idiots. If that item was easy to obtain, why would they be willing to give such generous conditions? The Purple Light Earth Valley was filled with danger. One wrong step could cost one his life, but for his son, Ling Dongxing set out without hesitation 7 days ago. Yesterday, the people from Huyang University came and informed the Ling family that they would come to pick him up as agreed. But at this time, the chief attendant of the Ling family, Ling Chongquan, came to discuss with his predecessor, asking him to give up this precious spot to his grandson, Ling Muyun. The reason was that Ling Muyun was a genius and had a bright future ahead of him. Such a chance couldn't be wasted by a trash. His predecessor naturally wouldn't agree. This was a chance that his father had risked his life for. But Ling Chongquan said it was a discussion, but in reality, he was only informing his predecessor. He didn't take his predecessor's opinion to heart at all. His predecessor couldn't take it anymore and made a move, but Ling Chongquan was a powerful warrior of Polytier. One finger was enough to suppress him, so how could he be a match for him? With just one punch, his predecessor was heavily injured and then locked in his own room. Obviously, he didn't want him to cause trouble in front of the people from Huyang University. And when Ling Dongxing returned, it was too late. And his predecessor, who was heavily injured, died from anger just like that. Ling Han humphed. This was really too much. This spot that his father had risked his life for was actually taken away by Ling Chongquan and his grandson just like that. This pair of shameless dogs. He couldn't take it anymore. He climbed out of bed and instantly felt sore all over. He was alive, but the injuries on his body wouldn't get better for no reason. And the spirit base is also injured. Ling Han frowned. Ling Chongquan's attack had caused damage to his spirit base, and an injury to the spirit base was a very troublesome matter. Normal medicine would be ineffective. As far as I know, there are 7 types of medicinal pills that can repair the spirit base. However, the ingredients needed for 4 of them are too expensive. Even if I sold the entire Ling family, it wouldn't be enough. Moreover, my spirit base was only lightly injured, so I don't need such high-grade medicinal pills. Of the remaining 3, 2 need to be refined into pills. With my current cultivation level of the 2nd layer of body refining tier, it's too difficult. Then there's only one choice. Element Heart Recovery Powder. I only need to mix the ingredients according to the ratio and boil them into a medicinal concoction. I'll heal my injuries first, then go stop Ling Chongquan and his grandson. Although I don't care for this spot, I definitely can't let this chance that father had risked his life for go to this shameless pair of grandfather and grandson. He sat down cross-legged and began to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. This was the first time he had circulated this possibly immortal level cultivation technique, but because he had studied it for over 10,000 years, it was extremely easy for him to circulate it now. Weng, 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 a strong life force instantly appeared in his body. His origin power was greatly depleted, but his injuries were rapidly recovering. In a mere few minutes, his injuries were completely healed. As expected of the indestructible heaven scroll. I've only just started cultivating, and it already has such a miraculous effect. However, this is completely different from other cultivation techniques. Normal cultivation techniques use the spirit base to transform the spiritual chi of heaven and earth into origin power, but the indestructible heaven scroll is the exact opposite. It uses origin power to refine the body and heal injuries. After cultivating it to the highest level, it's not impossible to become immortal and indestructible. That's why it's called the Heaven Scroll. Unfortunately, my current level is not high enough. Otherwise, I could use the indestructible Heaven Scroll to repair my spirit base. Ling Han opened his eyes and looked at the gradually brightening sky outside the window. He mumbled, "Now, it's time to meet that shameless old guy, Ling Chongquan, and give him a surprise." He put on his shoes, walked to the door, and opened the door. A tall figure immediately appeared at the door, blocking his path. This person's name was Zhang Yuan, and he was one of Ling Chongquan's lackeys. "Young Master Han, the head attendant has ordered that you have to stay in the room today," Zhang Yuan said with a mischievous smile. Although the person in front of him was the son of the clan head, he was famous for being trash. In Zhang Yuan's eyes, he was a joke. Ling Han's gaze turned cold, and he said, "You dare to stop me?" "Of course I'm stopping you. The head attendant has said that Ling Han must not be allowed to cause trouble today. If necessary, he could even be beaten up." Zhang Yuan put on a fake smile and said, "This is the head attendant's order. Young Master Han, please don't make things difficult for me." Ling Zhongquan, this old dog, was really cautious. He had severely wounded Ling Zhongquan, yet he was still not at ease, and had even sent someone to stand guard at the door. From this, it could be seen how important it was for Ling Zhongquan to have his grandson enter Huyang Academy. However, when this hope was shattered, Ling Zhongquan's disappointment and anger could be imagined. Get lost. Ling Han said coldly. Young Master Han, this is, Pa. Ling Han raised his hand and gave him a slap. He said coldly, who do you think you are? I told you to get lost, but you didn't. What? I was actually slapped by a trash. Zhang Yuan touched his face in disbelief. This trash actually dared to hit him, and he even hit him. What kind of joke was this? He flew into a rage. He thought of what Ling Chongquan had said before, that he could use violence when necessary. He couldn't help but be emboldened, and said coldly, Young Master Han, you forced me to do this. Slap. Ling Han waved his hand again, and gave him another solid slap. Chapter 2. Zhang Yuan was about to go crazy. He had actually been slapped twice by a piece of trash. In his rage, he did not even think about how a piece of trash at the second layer of body refining tier could slap him, a person at the fourth layer of body refining tier, twice. He immediately let out a loud roar and pounced towards Ling Han. Right now, he only had one thought, and that was to give this piece of trash a good beating. He threw a punch, full of power, and the sound of a strong wind could be heard. Ling Han was abnormally calm. In his previous life, he would naturally be able to deal with 10,000 Zhang Yuan with a flick of his fingers, but the current him only had the power of the second layer of body refining tier. It was a little troublesome, but it was only a little troublesome. After all, the one controlling this body was once a powerful warrior of the heaven tier, and his foresight was clear. As long as Zhang Yuan raised his hand or moved his leg, Ling Han would be able to predict where this punch would land and where his feet would move. Thus, the instant Zhang Yuan threw this punch, Ling Han had already reacted. This punch landed, and Zhang Yuan could not help but reveal a sinister sneer. If Ling Han was hit by his punch, the overwhelming power would instantly cause Ling Han to lose all ability to resist, and he would only be able to let himself be pummeled. It hit. Zhang Yuan revealed an expression of surprise, because this punch seemed to have landed on Ling Han's face, but in reality, it was just a hair's breadth off. Ling Han had taken a step back in time, perfectly dodging this punch. Not a bit more, not a bit less, as if it had been precisely measured with a ruler, stopping just in front of the tip of Ling Han's nose. It must be a coincidence, Zhang Yuan thought in his heart. Just at this moment, Ling Han's slap once again flew over. Pa! A crisp and clear sound rang out, and Zhang Yuan received another solid slap. Damn it! Zhang Yuan spat, and after a loud roar, he once again threw a punch towards Ling Han. Ling Han moved almost at the same time, leaning his upper body backward. Zhang Yuan's punch once again hit empty air. He propped his hands on the ground and kicked out with his right leg. With a thud, he kicked between Zhang Yuan's legs. Ao. So what if he was at the fourth layer of body refining tier? It was still impossible for him to train in the iron egg technique. After being kicked solidly, Zhang Yuan immediately knelt on the ground. His hands covered his crotch, and his face was covered in cold sweat the size of beans. You're so treacherous, Zhang Yuan said as he twitched. His entire face was so twisted that it almost didn't look human anymore. Ling Han slapped him again. Zhang Yuan opened his mouth and spat out several broken teeth. Ling Han naturally did not sympathize, and said, a dog will always be a dog. As expected, it can't spit out ivory. Zhang Yuan was furious. He was actually kneeling on the ground and getting slapped by someone at the second layer of body refining tier. What kind of humiliation was this? He wanted to retaliate, but the kick in his family jewels directly destroyed his ability to resist. Every movement made his balls hurt like hell. But he definitely could not let Ling Han ruin Ling Chongquan's plans. Otherwise, if he didn't complete the mission given to him, with Ling Chongquan's personality, he would definitely be killed. Han, young Master Han, listen to me. You can't leave this place. Actually, you've been poisoned. If you leave this room, you'll die. He had an idea in this desperate situation. No matter what, he had to keep Ling Han here. Ling Han could not help but laugh. This kind of clumsy performance could not fool him. He sent Zhang Yuan flying with a flying kick. Right now, he did not have time to waste on this lackey. He had to stop Ling Chongquan's evil plan from succeeding. Otherwise, his father's desperate efforts would all be for the benefit of others. As for Zhang Yuan, Ling Han naturally did not care about such a small fry. In any case, as long as Ling Chongquan appeared, he would definitely punish Zhang Yuan, so there was no need to dirty his hands. Don't go, don't go. Zhang Yuan's sobbing and pleading voice came from behind. He seemed to have already seen his miserable end. He brought this upon himself and did not deserve any sympathy. Ling Han walked with large strides. A few minutes later, he arrived at the inner door of the living room. Before he entered, he heard an old and loud voice, "Miss Lu, please come in." The living room had an inner door and an outer door. The inner door led to the inner courtyard, while the outer door led to the main door. Looking outside through the curtain, he saw a group of 5 people walking in, 4 men and a woman. Apart from the woman, Ling Han recognized the 4 men, who were all members of the Ling family. One of them was an old man in his 60s, who was the head deacon, Ling Chongquan. 2 of the other 3 were middle-aged men in their 40s, who were both sons of Ling Chongquan. The last one was a youngster, who was slightly older than Ling Han by a year or 2. That was Ling Chongquan's eldest grandson, Ling Muyun. Ling Han walked towards the only woman. Even with his vision as a celestial realm warrior in his previous life, his eyes still lit up. This woman was really beautiful. She looked like she was 17 or 18 years old, but she already possessed the charm that could bring disaster to a country. However, her expression was too cold, as if she was an iceberg that repelled anyone from getting close to her. This young woman must be someone from Huyang University. What a coincidence. Ling Han's eyes widened slightly. He discovered something even more coincidental, and a smile involuntarily appeared at the corner of his mouth. Both parties sat down, and several maids served fragrant tea and stood respectfully by the side of the 5 people's seats. Is the person that your Ling family is sending to the academy ready? Lu Yutong asked. Her voice was cold and pleasant, and there was even a hint of disdain in it. What she hated the most was people who opened the back door. Although she had come under orders, she did not have a good impression of this future junior brother. Ready, Ling Chongquan said hurriedly. Although he was old enough to be the young woman's grandfather, the 2 of them were shockingly in the same realm, which was the Pali realm. Age did not matter in martial arts, and the strong were respected. In fact, Ling Chongquan had a feeling that this young woman's cultivation was slightly higher than his. He was at the 6th level of the Pali realm, while this young woman might be at the 7th or even the 8th level. This also made him even more eager to send his grandson into Huyang University. In a few years, he would definitely be able to surpass Ling Dongxing in terms of realm and help him snatch the position of the family head. Muyun, hurry up and greet your senior sister Lu. The old man turned around and said to Ling Muyun. Yes, grandfather. Ling Muyun said very respectfully. He cupped his hands towards Lu Yutong and said, Muyun greets senior sister Lu. There was a trace of passion in his eyes, and he was full of ambition towards this cold, beautiful, and incomparably powerful beauty. He believed that as long as he could spend more time with her, he would definitely be able to win her heart. Lu Yutong was slightly surprised. She remembered that the person from the Ling family who opened the back door was called Ling Han. However, this had nothing to do with her. She was only responsible for bringing people back to the academy. Since you're ready, then let's go, she said indifferently. Miss Lu, would you like to stay in my humble home for a few days so that we can chat and express our sincerity? Ling Chongquan hurriedly asked. He wanted to get close to this young girl so that she could take care of his grandson in the future. There's no need. Lu Yutong coldly refused, and was about to turn around and leave. Stay for a moment. A voice rang out, and Ling Han also walked out with large strides. The expressions of Ling Chongquan and the other three changed slightly. No matter how much they looked down on this trash from the Ling family, they were still thieves after all. As thieves, of course they would feel a bit guilty. Little brother Han, aren't you injured? Hurry up and go back to your room to recuperate. Ling Muyun's reaction was extremely fast. With a quick stride, he scuttled to Ling Han's side and reached out to grab him. He wanted to restrain Ling Han at the first possible moment, and not give the other a chance to open his mouth. He was at the 7th layer of body refining tier, and his strength was definitely not something that Zhang Yuan could compare with. Chapter 3. Although Lu Yutong was tempted, to say that she would agree to become Ling Han's follower was something that was far from possible. She opened her red lips and said, "Change the condition." Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You are currently in the peak period of the 8th layer of element gathering tier, right? I'll give you 2 incantations as a sign of my sincerity: 3 yin nourishing origin, Tao area diagram, 3 flowers converging crown, piercing soaring clouds." At first, Lu Yutong did not think much of it. This guy was only in the 2nd layer of body refining tier, so what kind of astonishing incantations could he possibly give her? He was most likely just putting on an act. But when she heard these 2 incantations, the origin power in her body could not help but become restless, as if the door to the 9th layer of element gathering tier was about to open. She could not help but be moved. Although she knew that she would definitely be able to break through to the 9th layer of element gathering tier, the time for this should be a month later. But now, she had a strong feeling that she only needed 1 day. No, she could even go into seclusion and break through right now. This was too exaggerated, it was only 2 incantations. These are the 2 incantations from the 3E Mysterious Arts General Principles, how is it? Ling Han said with a smile. For the next incantation, he raised his voice and said, "Become my follower, and I'll teach you a supreme divine art." Pooh! Ling Zhongquan and the others all choked, and could not help but want to laugh loudly. Wasn't that so? Was there anything even funnier than this? A mere piece of trash actually wanted to take in a genius of Huyang Academy as his follower, and even said that he would teach him a supreme divine art. This boast really reached the heavens, and his guts were really too big. An idiot who did not know his own limits was practically laughable. The female attendants also covered their small mouths. They naturally knew about Ling Han's background, and just from the attitude that Ling Zhongquan and the others had towards Lu Yutong, they could tell just how noble this girl's status was. Lu Yutong's expression turned cold, and her figure shot out. She had already arrived in front of Ling Han, and her right hand shot out, grabbing onto his neck. She said coldly, "Recite the 3E Mysterious Arts Cultivation Technique, or else I'll kill you." Ling Han dared to state such a condition to her, so it was naturally impossible that he had not expected this kind of reaction from her. He only smiled, and said, "Kill me then. It won't be long before I'll be able to find you on the road to the Yellow Springs, and we'll be able to travel together." Lu Yutong's slender hand gripped his neck tighter and tighter. Normally, her fingers were as smooth as jade, but now they were like steel claws, causing Ling Han to be unable to breathe. Very soon, his face was flushed red, and his eyes were bloodshot. His 4 limbs could not help but start twitching. Ling Zhongquan and the others had no intention of interfering. They could not wait for Lu Yutong to kill Ling Han. "Are you going to speak or not?" Lu Yutong loosened her grip slightly. Ling Han forced out a smile, but shook his head resolutely. The current Ling clan was an extremely dangerous place for him, so he needed a powerful bodyguard. It was definitely not something that Lu Yutong could promise him anything. Only by having this noble lady protect him at all times would he be able to do so. What he currently lacked the most was time. As long as he was allowed to grow, what would a mere Ling clan amount to? Lu Yutong once again retracted her grip, and Ling Han's body began to spasm violently. Then, he suddenly stopped, his limbs drooping, and there was no longer any movement. He was really stubborn. Lu Yutong sighed internally. Her origin power surged out, and reactivated Ling Han's heartbeat. With a "hu" sound, Ling Han once again opened his eyes, and began to take deep breaths. 3 years. Lu Yutong said. At most 3 years. In these 3 years, I can listen to your orders. After 3 years, she would be 20 years old. If she did not fall into a deep slumber, then she would be completely free. Pooh! Ling Zhongquan and the others once again choked, but this time, they were extremely shocked and at a loss. Could it be that there was something wrong with their ears just now? Why did they seem to have heard Lu Yutong say that she had agreed to be Ling Han's follower, to be the subordinate of a piece of trash? This, they must have heard wrongly. This was definitely the case. Ling Han turned around, and revealed a smile. He raised his hand and said, "It's a deal." 3 years' time was enough for him to grow. At least, he would be able to far surpass Ling Zhongquan and the others, and would no longer have to worry about his life being in danger. Pa! Lu Yutong also stretched out her hand, and their palms met. This was the agreement between martial artists. What a tender hand. When their palms met, Ling Han could not help but feel a jolt in his heart. Although he had once been a powerful warrior of heaven tier, and was also the Alchemy Emperor, and in his last life, who knew how many exceedingly beautiful women had thrown themselves at him, but now that he had fused with the soul of his previous self, he seemed to have become young and impulsive. The passion that he had not felt for a long time burned fiercely within his body, making him feel as if he had really returned to being 16 years old. Ling Han enjoyed this kind of change. This was the meaning of life. "Miss Lu, don't listen to this little beast's nonsense. Let's get down to business," Ling Zhongquan interrupted. He did not want Ling Han to continue causing trouble. And that Zhang Yuan, he was really an idiot, not even able to stop a piece of trash. When he returned, he would definitely kill him. Chief Attendant Ling Han walked over coldly. "The opportunity to go to Huyang Academy was obtained by my father in exchange for his life. Now, my father is risking his life in the Purple Light Earth Valley, yet you shamelessly snatched away this opportunity. Don't you feel your face burning? Impudence, you actually dare to speak to me in such a manner." Ling Zhongquan instantly shouted. Previously, Lu Yutong had not taken this matter to heart, but since she had already made an agreement with Ling Han, her attitude naturally changed. She opened her mouth and said, "Chief Attendant Ling, what exactly is going on here? I need an explanation." Ling Zhongquan could pretend that he did not hear Ling Han's words, but Lu Yutong's words could not be ignored. She was the representative of Huyang Academy, and her personal strength was above his, so what right did he have to ignore Lu Yutong's words? He hurriedly said, "The matter is like this. This boy is the son of the clan head of the Han clan, Ling Dongxing. Thus, Ling Dongxing acted out of selfishness, and privately gave this opportunity to this boy. I am only considering the bigger picture, so that this opportunity can be truly used." What a good, bigger picture. Ling Han laughed coldly. "Ling Zhongquan, how shameless can you be? This opportunity was obtained by my father in exchange for his life, so what does it have to do with the clan? What need is there for you to worry about? You only want to give this opportunity to your own grandson, so that in future, when his cultivation level surpasses my father's, he can help you seize the position of clan head. Not only do you want to be the clan head, you also want to erect a chastity memorial arch. You are extremely shameless, shameless to the extreme." Being scolded by Ling Han to his heart's content, Ling Zhongquan was so furious that his whole body was trembling, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "Little beast, how dare you, to actually dare to insult this old man. Ling Zhongquan was filled with rage. He was actually scolded by a piece of trash. If he did not punish Ling Han severely, he would definitely be so furious that he would suffer an internal injury. Ling Han only smiled calmly, then turned his head to Lu Yutong and said, I have absolutely no interest in entering Huyang Academy. The trade for this spot is off the table, and Huyang Academy will compensate me with some spiritual medicine as a substitute. That's fine. Lu Yutong nodded. If they put all their efforts into nurturing a student, they would also have to pay a huge amount of spiritual medicine. No. Ling Zhongquan immediately shouted, this spot belongs to Mu Yun, none of you can snatch it away from him. Old dog, is there something wrong with your ears? This spot was obviously obtained by my father, what does it have to do with you? Ling Han sneered, then turned to Lu Yutong and said, next, this is the first order that I will give you. He paused for a moment, then said, restrain this old dog for me. I want to give this shameless old thing a few slaps. Lu Yutong only hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, all right. Ling Han had already expressed his sincerity by giving her 2 precious phrases of the oracular chant, so she naturally had to show her sincerity as well. What, Lu Yutong really had to agree to become Ling Han's follower. Follower sounded very noble, but in truth, it was just a follower, a servant. A dignified genius of Huyang Academy was actually willing to become someone else's follower. What kind of inconceivable thing was this? But this was the truth. Lu Yutong had already stood up, and her beautiful eyes were fixed on Ling Zhongquan. A strong fighting spirit was beginning to radiate from her beautiful body. Senior sister apprentice Lu, don't be fooled by this brat. Ling Mu Yun called out from the side, his face filled with shock. He could not accept that such a talented and intelligent girl like Lu Yutong would actually be fooled by Ling Han's flowery words. Especially since this exquisite beauty was someone he had been trying his best to pursue. Now, it was as if he had swallowed 10,000 flies, making him feel extremely depressed. Are you going to surrender, or wait for me to make my move? Lu Yutong said calmly. Chapter 4. Although Lu Yutong was tempted, it was impossible for her to agree to become Ling Han's follower. She opened her red lips and said, change your condition. Ling Han smiled and said, you're at the peak of the 8th layer of Pali right now. I'll give you 2 chants as a token of my sincerity, 3 Yin element nurturing, Tao square diagram, 3 flowers at the crown, piercing the heavens. Lu Yutong didn't think much of it at first. This guy was only at the 2nd layer of body refining, how could he give her such a shocking chant? He was most likely just trying to be mysterious. But when she heard the 2 chants, the magic energy in her body started to stir, as if the door to the 9th layer of Pali was opening. She couldn't help but be moved. Although she knew that she would definitely break through to the 9th layer of Pali, it should be a month later. But now she had a strong feeling that she only needed 1 day, no, she could even break through in seclusion right now. This was too exaggerated, it was just 2 chants. These are the first 2 sentences of the 3 Yin mysterious arts general principles. What do you think? Ling Han said with a smile. For the next sentence, he raised his voice, and said, become my follower, and I will teach you supreme divine arts. Pfft. Ling Chongquan and the others choked and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Wasn't that so? Was there anything funnier than this? A mere piece of trash actually wanted to accept a genius from Huyang University as a follower, and even said he would teach her a supreme divine art. This boast really broke the heavens, and his guts were too big. An idiot overestimating himself, it was simply laughable. The maids also covered their small mouths. They obviously knew about Ling Han's background, and just by looking at how Ling Chongquan and the others treated Lu Yutong, they knew how noble this girl's status was. Lu Yutong's expression turned cold, and her figure swept forward, arriving in front of Ling Han. Her right hand reached out and grabbed his neck. She said coldly, recite the 3E mysterious art, or I'll kill you. Since Ling Han dared to propose conditions to the other party, it was naturally impossible for him not to have expected such a reaction from the other party. He only smiled and said, kill me then. It won't be long before I can find you on the road to the Yellow Springs and travel together with you. Lu Yutong's slender hand tightened. Normally, her fingers were as smooth as jade, but now they were like steel claws, causing Ling Han to be unable to breathe. Very quickly, his face turned red, and his eyes became bloodshot. His limbs began to twitch uncontrollably. Ling Chongquan and the other three had no intention of interfering. They could not wait for Lu Yutong to kill Ling Han. Are you going to tell me or not? Lu Yutong loosened her grip slightly. Ling Han forcefully squeezed out a smile, but he shook his head firmly. Right now, the Ling clan was an extremely dangerous place for him, and he needed a strong bodyguard. It was definitely not something that Lu Yutong could promise him with any conditions. Only by having this noble lady protect him at all times would he be able to do so. What he lacked the most now was time. As long as he could grow up, the Ling family was nothing to him. Lu Yutong withdrew her strength again, and Ling Han's body began to twitch violently. Then, it suddenly stopped, and his limbs drooped. He no longer moved. How stubborn! Lu Yutong sighed in her heart, and her essence force surged out, reactivating Ling Han's heartbeat. With a "hoo" sound, Ling Han opened his eyes again and began to breathe heavily. 3 years. Lu Yutong said, at most 3 years. In these 3 years, I can listen to your orders. After 3 years, she would be 20 years old. If she did not stay in a coma for a long time, she would be completely free. Pu, Ling Chongquan and the others choked again, but this time, they were extremely shocked and at a loss. Could it be that there was something wrong with their ears? Why did they seem to have heard Lu Yutong agree to be Ling Han's follower, to be the subordinate of a piece of trash? This, they must have heard wrongly, that was definitely the case. Ling Han turned around, revealed a smile, raised his hand, and said, it's a promise. 3 years was enough for him to grow up. At least, he would be far above Ling Chongquan and the others, and he would no longer have to worry about his life being in danger. Pa! Lu Yutong also extended her hand, and met his palm. This was the agreement between cultivators. What a tender hand! When they clapped hands, Ling Han could not help but feel a jolt in his heart. Although he was once an expert of the heaven tier, and was also the alchemy emperor, who had countless beauties throwing themselves at him in his previous life, after fusing with the soul of his previous life, he seemed to have become young and impulsive. The long-lost passion was burning in his body, making him feel as if he had really returned to being 16 years old. Ling Han enjoyed this change. This was the meaning of life. Miss Lu, don't listen to this little beast's nonsense. Let's get down to business, Ling Chongquan interrupted. He did not want Ling Han to continue making trouble. And that Zhang Yuan, what an idiot. He couldn't even take care of a piece of trash. I'll kill him when I get back. Head Deacon Ling Han walked over coldly. The place to go to Huyang University was exchanged with my father's life. Now, my father is risking his life in Purple Light Earth Valley, and you shamelessly snatched this place away. Don't you feel ashamed? Impudent! How dare you talk to me like this? Ling Chongquan immediately shouted. Lu Yutong did not take this matter to heart before, but since she had already made an agreement with Ling Han, her attitude naturally changed. She said, Deacon Ling, what is going on? I need an explanation. Ling Chongquan could pretend that he did not hear Ling Han's words, but he could not do the same with Lu Yutong. She was the representative of Huyang University, and her strength was above his. What right did he have to ignore Lu Yutong's words? He hurriedly said, it's like this. This boy is the son of the clan head of the Han clan, Ling Dongxing. Thus, Ling Dongxing acted out of selfishness, and privately gave this slot to this boy. I am only considering the bigger picture, and using this slot to its fullest potential. Thinking of the big picture? Ling Han sneered. Ling Chongquan, are you shameless? This place was exchanged with my father's life. What does it have to do with the family? You don't need to worry about it. You just want to give this place to your grandson so that he can surpass my father in cultivation in the future and help you seize the position of the head of the Han family. You want to be the head of the Han family and build a chastity memorial archway. How shameless. Ling Chongquan was so angry that his entire body trembled after being scolded by Ling Han. He almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. Little beast, how dare you insult this old man? Ling Chongquan was filled with rage. He had actually been scolded by a piece of trash. If he didn't heavily punish Ling Han, he would definitely suffer internal injuries from anger. Ling Han only smiled faintly. He turned to Lu Yutong and said, I have no interest in entering Huyang University at all. The trade for this place is off the table. Have Huyang University compensate me with some spirit herbs as a substitute. That's fine. Lu Yutong nodded. If she put all her efforts into nurturing a student, she would have to fork out a huge amount of spirit herbs. No. Ling Chongquan immediately shouted, this place belongs to Muyun. None of you can snatch it away. Old dog, is there something wrong with your ears? This place was obviously obtained by my father, so what does it have to do with you? Ling Han sneered, then turned to Lu Yutong, and said, now, this is the first command I'm giving you. He paused for a moment and then said, restrain this old dog for me. I want to give this shameless old fool a few slaps. Lu Yutong only hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right. Ling Han had already expressed his sincerity by giving her two precious chants. She naturally had to show her sincerity as well. What? Did Lu Yutong really have to agree to become Ling Han's follower? Follower sounded very high and mighty, but it was actually just a follower, a servant. A grand genius of Huyang University was actually willing to become someone else's follower. Just how inconceivable was that? But that was the truth. Lu Yutong had already stood up, her beautiful eyes staring at Ling Chongquan. Her beautiful body began to emit a powerful battle intent. Senior apprentice Sister Lu, don't be fooled by this brat. Ling Muyun called out from the side. His face was filled with shock. He was unable to accept that such a talented and intelligent woman like Lu Yutong would actually be fooled by Ling Han's flowery words. Especially when this peerlessly beautiful woman was someone he had done everything he could to pursue. Now it was as if he had eaten 10,000 flies. He was extremely depressed. Are you going to surrender, or are you going to wait for me to make a move? Lu Yutong asked indifferently. Chapter 5. Lu Yutong had absolute confidence. She was at the 8th level of Pali, while Ling Chongquan was only at the 6th level of Pali. Even though there was a difference of 2 levels, one was at the late stage of Pali, while the other was at the middle stage. There was a huge gap between them. Ling Chongquan was both angry and shocked. He said, Miss Lu, are you really going to help this little beast? Old dog, watch your mouth, Ling Han said unhurriedly. These words made Ling Chongquan and the other 3 furious. You keep calling him old dog, yet you want others to watch their mouth. Is it true that only the officials are allowed to set fires, but the common people are not allowed to light lamps? Too domineering. Ling Han smiled faintly. So what if he was domineering? In his previous life, he was famous for shielding those close to him. In front of outsiders, he would definitely protect those on his side. Whether it was right or wrong, they could discuss it behind closed doors. Ling Chongquan and his grandson had gone too far. It would be strange if he could swallow this anger. Lu Yutong did not reply. Her delicate body leaped out lightly. She struck out with her hand, pressing towards Ling Chongquan. She was like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. There was not a trace of anger in her, and she appeared to be out of this world. But Ling Chongquan definitely did not feel this way. Cold sweat was already rolling down his forehead. He was at the middle stage of Pali, while his opponent was at the late stage. This was a gap that could not be crossed. But Ling Chongquan did not want to be slapped by this trash, a junior like Ling Han. Thus, he had to fight back. No matter what, he had to escape. Bang! He unleashed the Ling family's secret skill, 3 flips, and charged towards Lu Yutong. This was a middle-grade yellow-level martial arts technique. It was also one of the 3 great secret skills of the Ling family. The Ling family relied on these 3 secret skills to ascend to the position of one of the 2 great families in Grey Cloud Town. Its power was naturally terrifying. Unfortunately, his opponent was Lu Yutong. Little Plum's snapping hand. The ice beauty softly scolded. Her slender hand flipped and tapped, her movements indescribably elegant. However, the power behind it was incomparably terrifying. As her slender hand streaked across, Ling Chongquan could only retreat step by step, his old face turning red. Little Plum's snapping hands, yellow tier upper tier martial technique. His cultivation and martial techniques were suppressed. If there was any advantage that Ling Chongquan had, it would be his decades of combat experience. However, the problem was that Lu Yutong was a martial art genius. Although she lacked experience, she had an amazing understanding of combat, which could completely make up for her lack of experience. How can Ling Chongquan not be defeated after merely 50 to 60 moves? Ling Chongquan was restrained. His dantian was sealed, and his origin energy was unable to flow. He was not much stronger than an ordinary person. Grandfather! Father! Ling Muyun and the other 2 shouted. They wanted to rush forward, but they were intimidated by Lu Yutong's strength. They could only glare angrily at Ling Han. They did not have the slightest intention to reflect on themselves. They only felt that everything was Ling Han's fault. If Ling Han did not appear, then things would have developed according to plan. Ling Han looked at Lu Yutong and said, "If you slightly change your attacking style, your combat strength will be even stronger. For example, during the 17th move, you only need to lower your right hand and slap your left hand forward 2 inches, and you will be able to restrain your opponent." At first, Lu Yutong was unconvinced. She thought that Ling Han had found some ancient era's treasury and obtained some high-level secret arts. That was why he was able to loosen her bottleneck with just 2 sentences of the oracular chant and was on the verge of breaking through. However, when she recalled the previous battle, her expression involuntarily changed. That was because Ling Han's words could not be more correct. Just then, if she had followed Ling Han's instructions, she would have been able to end this battle even faster. She could not help but feel a trace of reverence towards Ling Han. His gaze was too terrifying. Ling Han laughed in his heart. Who was he? He was the king of martial art from 10,000 years ago. Could it be that he could not subdue a little girl? He walked in front of Ling Chongquan and raised his right hand high. "Little bastard, you dare!" Ling Chongquan said furiously. If he was slapped by Ling Han, would he still have the face to see others in the future? Slap! Without hesitation, Ling Han slapped Ling Chongquan hard across the face. Hiss! The 3 members of the Ling family and the 5 maids all sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. He was really slapped, he really had to be slapped. The dignified head deacon of the Ling family was actually slapped in public by a publicly acknowledged trash. Hiss, no wonder this old dog's skin is so thick. "My hand is hurting from slapping him," Ling Han said, gritting his teeth. This was natural. The refinement realm was to use origin energy to temper every part of the body. Every muscle would be filled with origin energy. A punch or a kick would be able to explode with terrifying power. Ling Chongquan was already in the Pali realm and had completed the refinement realm. Thus, his face was naturally completely tempered by origin energy. Even a full-force slap from someone in the middle stage of refinement realm might not be able to injure him. At most, it would cause him some pain or bleed. Only a weapon would be able to injure him. However, right now, it was not a matter of injury, but of humiliation. To be slapped by a trash in the second layer of refinement realm, a junior, and in front of 5 maids at that, what kind of extraordinary humiliation was this? If word of this got out, how would he be able to face others? Ling Chongquan's eyes were about to spit fire. He sternly shouted, "Little bastard, this matter will not end like this. You will definitely regret it, definitely. AI, to actually threaten me in front of my follower, how stupid." Ling Han sighed and said to Lu Yutong, "Someone is threatening your master. What do you think we should do?" Lu Yutong's pretty face also twitched slightly. She was the pampered daughter of the Lu family, how could she be used to being someone else's follower? However, she was still very trustworthy, and immediately said, "Do you need me to kill him?" When these words came out, Ling Chongquan's 2 sons and Ling Muyun all jumped in fright. Ling Chongquan was their backbone, the tree that held up the sky. If Ling Chongquan died, then their authority in the Ling family would also collapse. Ling Han smiled and shook his head, saying, "This old dog is my father's, so my father should personally deal with him." However, he took off a table leg and weighed it in his hand. He can be spared from death, but he cannot escape punishment. Peng, he raised the table leg and slapped Ling Chongquan's face. With a heavy sound, Ling Chongquan instantly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood with a broken tooth. "Old dog, my father risked his life to take risks, but you took away his hope. Tell me, shouldn't you be slapped? You have a son and a grandson, but my father doesn't. Yesterday, you relied on your strength to seriously injure me. This is the attitude that an elder should have. Since you are shameless and don't want to be an elder, why should I give you face and treat you as an elder?" Ling Han slapped him with his rod every time he spoke. After a few hits, Ling Chongquan's hair was already disheveled, his face was covered in blood, and at least half of his teeth had fallen out. However, even though he looked miserable, with the strong vitality of a martial artist, as long as he did not suffer internal injuries, even the most serious external injuries could quickly heal. Therefore, Ling Han was also very satisfied with the beating, and did not have to worry about accidentally killing the other. Ling Chongquan no longer said anything. He secretly swore in his heart that when he had the strength to suppress Ling Dongxing in the future, he would definitely skin this pair of father and son alive. "My hands are tired from all the beating." Ling Han threw away his rod and said, "Yutong, go out with me." "Rain, Yutong." Immediately, Lu Yutong shivered. This form of address made her feel very mushy. Chapter 6. Ling Han and Lu Yutong exited the door. Ling Muyun and the others wanted to stop them, but did not dare to make a move. Even Ling Chongquan was defeated, so who else in the Ling family could be a match for them? Unless Ling Dongxing came back. But even if Ling Dongxing came back, it was obvious which side he would help. The 5 female attendants all had very interesting expressions on their faces. They had just witnessed a very interesting show, which was enough for them to brag about for 3 years. After exiting the Ling family, Lu Yutong asked Ling Han, "Where are we going?" "Tianyuji," Ling Han said casually. Lu Yutong gave an "oh." She thought that Ling Han was going to concoct medicine for her. After all, she was a patient. The 2 of them walked very quickly, and arrived at their destination in about 10 minutes. Tianyuji was a very large force, and had branches in every city of Rain Country. As for whether there were branches outside of Rain Country, he was not sure due to the limited experience of his previous self. In short, Tianyuji had the most complete range of medicinal ingredients and alchemical pills. If they could not be bought here, then they definitely could not be bought in other places. Ling Han walked into the medicine pavilion and arrived at a window. Behind the window sat a young girl, who was very beautiful. Seeing Ling Han walk over, she immediately stood up, smiled, and said, "Hello, my name is Xiao Tao. It is my honor to serve you." She took a few more glances at Lu Yutong. After all, this girl was very beautiful, and even as a girl, she could not move her eyes away. Ling Han nodded, and said, I want purple lotus grass, branch blue fruit, 100-year vermilion bamboo, red leaf sweet potato, and rotten leaf withered tree root. Xiao Tao's expression was blank. She had worked here for more than 2 years, but had never heard of the names of these 5 medicinal ingredients. She was startled for a while, and then said, Customers, I am very sorry, but I have never heard of these 5 medicinal ingredients. Please wait a moment, I will help you ask others. Sure. Ling Han nodded his head. These 5 medicinal herbs were indeed very rare. Apart from being used to concoct the Yuanshin spirit recovery powder, they were rarely used in other places. Although the grade of the Yuan Xian spirit recovery powder was not high, it was an original prescription that he had created in his previous life. Although he had passed it on to a few people, it was not certain if it had been passed down. After a while, Xiao Tao and a middle-aged man in his 30s walked over together. You're the troublemaker. The middle-aged man glanced at Ling Han, his face full of disdain. Ling Han frowned and said, What do you mean by a troublemaker? Randomly reporting medicinal ingredients that don't even exist. If this isn't deliberately causing trouble, then what is? The middle-aged man snorted, his expression as if he had seen through him long ago. Ling Han said, How do you know that these medicinal herbs were randomly reported by me? Isn't this nonsense? I'm a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist. I've never even heard of these medicinal ingredients. If you're not randomly reporting them, then what are you? Get out of here. The middle-aged man waved his hand as if he was shooing away a fly. His name was Ma Dajuan, and he was indeed a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist. There were other customers in the store, and when they heard him say that, they all made an "oh" sound and revealed expressions of respect. Alchemist was a very rare and noble profession. It was divided into heaven, earth, black, and yellow grades. Each grade could be further subdivided into 3 small grades, high, medium, and low. However, even low-level alchemists like yellow-grade mid-level alchemists were extremely popular and respected, and were fought over by various factions. For example, there was only one alchemist in Grey Cloud Town, and he served in Tianyiji. Normally, he was not required to concoct any alchemical pills, and was only used to stand guard. Thus, Ma Dajuan naturally had enough confidence to be arrogant. Even Alchemist Ma said so, this brat must be here to cause trouble. How laughable. He actually came to Tianyiji to cause trouble, where did this idiot come from? He's just trying to impress the crowd, right? Everyone was speaking up for Ma Dajuan. Alchemists were extremely noble, and thus, their bias was naturally very obvious. Ling Han was a little angry, and said, If you haven't heard of it, then that's because you're not skilled enough. How can you arbitrarily assume that someone is here to cause trouble? Go and call the most knowledgeable person in your store over, I'll speak with him. Who do you think you are, to dare order me to do things? Ma Dajuan was similarly very displeased. He had already personally come out to expose the truth, so why were you still pestering him endlessly? Moreover, he was the person in charge of this place in Tianyiji, who could be more knowledgeable than him? Of course, Grandmaster Zhu did not count. He had only come here to sightsee and suddenly had an inspiration, so he wanted to borrow this place's Tianyiji to concoct an alchemical pill. Lu Yutong saw this, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly, appearing a little expectant. This time, she would not make a move. Tianyiji was a colossal place. Even the Rain Country royalty had to be polite to it, not to mention that she was only a junior of the Lu family. She would definitely not accompany Ling Han to cause trouble. Aren't you quite capable? How are you going to regain your face now? Although she had agreed to be Ling Han's follower, and it was only temporary, with her pride and arrogance, she would naturally not be willing to do so, at least not now. Thus, she very much wanted to see Ling Han's embarrassed expression. No matter how cold a woman was, she would still have a vengeful heart. What are you waiting for? Get lost. Ma Dajuan flicked his hand, an impatient expression on his face. You'd better not regret this, Ling Han said slowly. Ha, what can you do to me? Ma Dajuan could not help but be amused. This youth actually dared to threaten him. The other people in the shop also had mocking expressions. Was this youth a spoiled young master from some family? Even if he was the son of one of the city's two great clans, so what? How could he have the right to challenge a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist? Ling Han only smiled, and turned to look at Lu Yutong. A flash of disdain flashed past Lu Yutong's heart. Was he going to ask her to make a move again? However, she heard Ling Han say, shout loudly, too much Copper Valley sand. Shout 3 times, the louder the better. What did this mean? Lu Yutong's beautiful eyes widened, but when she saw Ling Han's confident expression, her heart trembled. She could not help but do as he said, shouting loudly, too much Copper Valley sand. Too much Copper Valley sand. Too much Copper Valley sand. She was in the poly tier, and her voice was full of energy, like a lion's roar. The two of you are crazy, hurry and chase them out. Ma Dajuan said angrily to the 2 guards in the shop. There was a loud bang, as if something had exploded. Any alchemist could immediately tell that this was a cauldron explosion. This was something that every alchemist would encounter. Shio, 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 a series of footsteps sounded, coming down from upstairs. Very quickly, an old man with a head full of white hair and beard appeared at the bottom of the stairs. With a big stride, he rushed in front of Lu Yutong, and said excitedly, how did you know that too much Copper Valley sand was put in? The old man's body still bore the terrible appearance of a cauldron explosion, part of his hair, beard, eyebrows, and hair had been burnt off, half of his face was black, and his clothes were also tattered. Being stared at by such an old man with such an intense gaze, the strange feeling in Lu Yutong's heart could be imagined. But what shocked her even more was the silver badge pinned on the old man's chest. That was the symbol of an alchemist. Silver represented black grade, while 1 represented low level. This old man was a black grade low-level alchemist. Good heavens, such an existence, even in the imperial city, would be an esteemed guest of all the great clans. Even her Lu family's clan head would have to politely address him as Grandmaster when they saw him. But now, this Grandmaster was actually looking at her like a pug, his face full of curiosity. How could this not make Lu Yutong feel strange? She could not help but look at Ling Han. How many other miraculous things did this youth have? Chapter 7. If it had been half a day ago, Lu Yutong really might have burned the bridge after crossing it. She would first swindle the cultivation technique into her hands, and then give Ling Han some monetary compensation. Who asked Ling Han to disregard her noble status as the daughter of a noble family, and insist on taking her as his follower? But now, she was hesitating. The reserved nature of a woman made her very much want to leave Ling Han, but when she thought of all the amazing things that he had done, she also wanted to stay by Ling Han's side. What were his limits? Maybe I will, maybe I won't, who can say for sure? She gave an ambiguous answer. Ling Han laughed loudly. If Lu Yutong had solemnly vowed that she would be loyal and devoted to him in the future, he would not have believed her. However, as a mighty warrior of Heaven Tier, the Alchemy Emperor, how could it be that he would not be able to subdue such a little girl? Take off your clothes, he said casually. Lu Yutong instantly looked furious. Could it be that Ling Han was going to use teaching her a cultivation technique as a threat to force her to give herself to him? Although she did not want to die, and very much wanted to cure her illness, but if she had to use her body in exchange, then she would rather die. Don't misunderstand, Ling Han said with a smile, I only want to guide you on the path of circulation of origin power. When this cultivation technique is being circulated, origin power will travel through many strange paths, and it is definitely not something that can be explained clearly with words. You should know that when it comes to the circulation of cultivation techniques, the slightest error can lead to a great loss. There must not be the slightest bit of error. Lu Yutong could not help but be startled. What Ling Han said was not false. There were innumerable meridians in the human body, and as long as there was a slight difference in the route of circulation of origin power, the effect would be as different as heaven and earth. The problem was, she was an unmarried young lady, so how could she strip naked and allow a man to have his fingers roam all over her body? She considered for a long time, and proposed a compromise. She would keep her undergarments, and Ling Han would not be able to use his fingers. Instead, he would use chopsticks to guide the circulation of origin power. You go out first, Lu Yutong said, pointing at the outer room. Hey, this is my room, Ling Han said with a smile, but he still stood up and walked outside. He still had this bit of poise. After a long while, he heard Lu Yutong say, "You can come in." Ling Han walked into the room, and saw Lu Yutong sitting on the bed, a sheet draped over her delicate body. Her beautiful hair cascaded down like a waterfall, and she looked extremely alluring. What an enchanting beauty, Ling Han said in his heart. Even with his picky eyes in his last life, he could not help but admit that this icy beauty's charm caused even his heart to flutter. Her snow-white teeth bit lightly on her red lips, and her beautiful eyes wandered, seeming to be filled with resentment and sorrow. Lu Yutong slowly removed the sheet, revealing her delicate body that was as fair as jade. She only wore a tube top on her upper body, and her fair and tender skin was like the finest jade, exuding an enchanting luster. She wore a pair of panties on her lower body, but the trousers had been forcefully torn off from her thighs, revealing a pair of slender and perfectly straight legs. If there was a bit more, she would be plump, and if there was a bit less, she would be skinny. It could be said that she was perfect, and would cause anyone's heart to palpitate. Seeing Ling Han's gaze sweep over to her, she could not help but feel shy. A blush appeared on her jade-like face, adding to her beauty. Good heavens, she was originally an icy beauty, and now that her face was flushed red, she instantly looked extremely alluring and flirtatious. Even with Ling Han's temperament as a heaven-tier elite in his last life, his appetite was slightly aroused, and he wanted to devour this enchanting little vixen. But he immediately calmed himself down, and said, "Sit down cross-legged, I will teach you the first layer of 3 mysterious arts." He recited it word by word. At first, Lu Yutong was still unable to get into the zone. After all, she was practically naked in the same room as a man. But her heart of martial arts quickly gained the upper hand, and she listened attentively to Ling Han's recitation, committing it to memory. Ling Han recited it very quickly, and Lu Yutong also displayed a shocking talent. She practically could not forget what she heard. Ling Han had only recited it twice, and Lu Yutong had already memorized nearly 1,000 words of the recitation. This was only the first step. Next, the most important part was the circulation route of origin power. Ling Han used his chopsticks as his fingers, and lightly stroked them on Lu Yutong's delicate body, guiding her on the circulation of origin power. Once, twice, it was only 3 times, and Lu Yutong was already able to circulate her origin power according to this new cultivation technique. She indeed lived up to her reputation as a genius. Ling Han hurriedly walked out. This little vixen's charm was really not small. He seemed to have slightly overestimated his own willpower. If he continued to stay, it was very likely that he would take advantage of the situation to push down this seductive beauty. Since Lu Yutong had already started cultivating, then she would definitely not wake up in a short period of time. Ling Han then sat down in the outer room, and similarly began cultivating. However, he was not cultivating the 5 elements heaven grade skill, but rather the indestructible heaven scroll. Because his spirit base had not yet recovered, he did not want to take any risks. If his spirit base was further injured, then it would not be something that could be healed by the element heart recover spirit powder. The circulation of the indestructible heaven scroll was like a bottomless pit, rapidly depleting the originally small amount of origin power in his body. It tempered his muscles, meridians, and bones, advancing in a more powerful direction. If he cultivated it to the pinnacle, his body would be indestructible and immortal. Even if a large star were to crash into him, it was guaranteed that the large star would be the one to shatter, and he would be completely unaffected. Of course, he was currently too far away from this step. After a mere 5 minutes, the origin power in his body was completely depleted. At this time, he swallowed a return origin pill to quickly replenish the origin power in his body, and then continued to cultivate. Every medicine had its own poison. In the beginning, the return origin pill could bring out the greatest effect, but as he consumed more and more of them, his body also developed a strong resistance to the effects of the medicinal pills, causing the effects of the medicinal pills to become weaker and weaker. By the time he consumed the last return origin pill, he could not even recover 1/10 of his origin power. Ling Han stopped. Today was the end, and there would not be any effect even if he continued to cultivate. However, his improvement was very obvious. His muscles, meridians, and bones had all become slightly stronger. According to his estimation, this kind of strength was already comparable to the 3rd layer of body refining tier. As expected of the Heaven's Scroll, awesome. In his last life, Ling Han had also cultivated a few restorative martial arts, such as Golden Body Technique and Monolith Technique, both of which allowed one's body to become stronger, but when compared to the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. This was very normal. If the indestructible Heaven's Scroll was not so awesome, how could a powerful warrior of Heaven tier need over 10,000 years to comprehend it? Moreover, it was only the 1st layer. However, cultivating this Heaven's Scroll really consumes a lot of origin power, and it also requires a large amount of natural treasures to assist in tempering my body, which will definitely slow down the progress of my cultivation. However, the power of this Heaven's Scroll is too great, so even if my cultivation is a bit slower, it's still worth it. After all, I have an immortal grade spirit base. Let's not think about the highest tier of indestructible Heaven's Scroll for now. The 1st layer of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll is also divided into 4 tiers, which are the Dead Tree tier, the Rock Cliff tier, the Iron Sheet tier, and the Diamond tier. Upon reaching the Dead Tree tier, one's body would be like a dead tree, and when one receives an attack, it would be as if one had struck a dead tree. The dead tree would be injured, but the vitality would not be harmed. Moreover, one's vitality would disappear like a dead tree, and no one would be able to tell that one was a living person. Upon reaching the Diamond tier, no matter how heavy the injury, one would be able to immediately heal it with a single thought. Even severed limbs could be regrown, practically like a divine technique. Ling Han turned around and walked towards the door of the inner chamber. The curtain was lifted, and a fairy-like figure walked out. There was a faint blush on her pretty face, and she was beautiful, charming, and had a myriad of manners. You've cultivated the 1st layer of the 3 mysterious arts to the pinnacle? Ling Han asked, a little surprised. Lu Yutong nodded, a little afraid to meet Ling Han's gaze. A strange emotion was rippling in her heart, as if there was some kind of unprecedented feeling growing and growing within her. This young girl is really a genius, Ling Han thought. Chapter 8. Young friend, please take a seat. Zhu He-Xian invited attentively, appearing to be extremely polite, not daring to put on the airs of a black-grade alchemist. I can guarantee that within 5 days, no, within 3 days, the medicinal ingredients that young friend needs will be delivered. All right. Ling Han nodded. In his last life, he was at the peak, but now he was still very weak, so there was no harm in making more friends and developing more relationships. As for an insignificant character like Ma Dajuan, a light punishment was enough. It was not worthwhile for him to lower himself to the same level as the other. Zhu He-Xian was instantly overjoyed, and hurriedly led the way in front, bringing Ling Han and Lu Yutong to the 3rd floor, entering an elegant study. May I ask which expert young friend's master is? The old man asked. No sect, I'm self-taught. Ling Han said. In his last life, he had once visited various major alchemy forces, and finally formed his own sect, becoming the greatest alchemist in history. Zhu Hexian did not believe it. Ling Han was so young, how could he have such deep attainments in alchemy? However, he also admired Ling Han very much, and had the intention of inviting the latter to join Tianyiji, so he spoke to test him. Ling Han answered calmly. He was a Grand Master of alchemy, reigning supreme in both the present and the past. Who could compare with him in alchemy? As he spoke, the initiative fell into his hands, and from time to time, Zhu Hexian racked his brains to think hard, and the expression on the old man's face also became more and more respectful. There was no seniority in learning, only the capable could be the teacher. The old man had previously addressed Ling Han as young friend, placing himself in a higher position, but he soon changed the way he addressed Ling Han, and called him fellow alchemist. In the end, cold sweat rolled down his forehead, and he couldn't help but stand up, respectfully standing by Ling Han's side to listen to his teachings. He was like an alchemy apprentice, just like how he had been when he was learning from his master. In his heart, Ling Han had already reached such a height. He even had a feeling that in terms of theory and knowledge, Ling Han had far surpassed his master. "Master, can I stay by your side and listen to your teachings?" Zhu Hexian said something that almost scared Lu Yutong to death. But when she thought about it carefully, it seemed reasonable. However, if the great clans in the imperial capital were to find out about this, they would probably kill Ling Han out of jealousy. This was a black-grade alchemist. Though he was only a low-level alchemist, the 2 words black-grade were still not enough. Lu Yutong was shocked. Her resistance to being Ling Han's follower had lessened a little. Even a master of alchemy like Zhu Hexian was begging to follow Ling Han. What else could she be dissatisfied with? Ling Han shook his head and said, "I don't have any plans to accept disciples for now." To be honest, Zhu Hexian's talent in alchemy was only average in his eyes. He had accepted 3 disciples in the past, and which one of them was not breathtakingly outstanding? Zhu Hexian only felt that it was a pity. He also knew that Ling Han was looking down on his talent in alchemy, and was not qualified to be his disciple. He also felt that this was very natural. Ling Han's attainments in alchemy were really too high, and he could only look up to him. Wanting to be his disciple was indeed an extravagant hope. Yet Lu Yutong was dumbstruck. Ling Han had actually refused. Refused? That was a black-grade low-level alchemist. As long as Zhu Hexian was willing to nod his head, even if it was the Rain Country royalty, he would still have to accept it. In fact, he would even be willing to send a princess to marry him. But Ling Han had actually refused, and had done so without any hesitation. This guy was really hard to understand. However, if there is anything you do not understand, you can come to the Ling clan to look for me at any time, Ling Han added. Many thanks, Grandmaster, many thanks, Grandmaster. Zhu Hexian hurriedly clasped his hands in greeting, unable to conceal the joy on his face. Lu Yutong was speechless internally. If this scene had been seen by others, they would definitely be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out of their sockets. That was a black-grade alchemist. How noble was his status. Yet now, he was performing the etiquette of a disciple in front of Ling Han, and even felt honored to be able to pay him a visit. "And, then I'll take my leave first," Ling Han said. "I'll see you off, Grandmaster." Zhu Hexian hurriedly said. "Oh, right, Yutong, you've brought money with you, right? Pay for the medicine first." Ling Han turned his head and said to Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong now naturally knew that this medicine was bought by Ling Han for himself, and not to treat her illness. She could not help but purse her lips, thinking that this guy really knew how to make full use of everything. He had just taken her in as his follower, and he was already eyeing her purse. No need, no need. Zhu Hexian hurriedly waved his hands. The alchemy knowledge that he had heard from Ling Han today could be said to be priceless. How could he have the nerve to accept Ling Han's medicine money? Grandmaster, just let me express my sincerity. Ling Han thought for a moment, and said, then it's up to you. Although he had only casually given some pointers to Zhu Hexian, he was once the alchemy emperor. This bit of guidance was enough for Zhu Hexian to benefit for the rest of his life. Zhu Hexian's face was instantly filled with joy. To be able to do something for Ling Han, even if it was such a small matter, he was extremely happy, and even felt honored. Then I'll buy some return origin pills, Ling Han thought for a moment, and said. Return origin pills are such worthless things, how could I possibly need Grandmaster to buy them? In any case, I can casually concoct them, so naturally I'll gift them to Grandmaster, Zhu Hexian hurriedly said. Lu Yutong was once again speechless. Return origin pills could rapidly allow martial artists to recover origin power, and were indispensable supplementary pills in battle. How could they be casually concocted so easily? Although Ling Han only needed the lowest grade return origin pills, one pill would still cost at least 3 taels of silver. Zhu Hexian was very generous, and directly gave Ling Han 100 return origin pills. If it wasn't for the fact that Ling Han was still in the refinement realm, and could only take low-grade return origin pills, he would definitely have gifted him high-grade return origin pills. Under his accompaniment, Ling Han and Lu Yutong went downstairs, and left. Where are we going now? After the two of them walked for a while, Lu Yutong finally couldn't help but ask. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, naturally, we're going home, and waiting for someone to send the medicine over. If he didn't treat his spirit root first, he wouldn't be able to start cultivating. Lu Yutong was curious, and asked, do you really know alchemy? In this world, there shouldn't be anyone who knows alchemy better than I do, Ling Han said bluntly. Boasting? Lu Yutong humphed. Although Ling Han had convinced Zhu Hexian to the point that Zhu Hexian was willing to die for him, Zhu Hexian was only a black-grade alchemist, and above that, there were still earth-grade and heaven-grade alchemists. Ling Han didn't argue with her. His status had already been recorded in history. Why didn't you agree to let Grandmaster Zhu follow by your side? He's not only an alchemist, but also a powerful warrior of gushing spring tier, Lu Yutong asked. Ling Han's footsteps paused, and he turned his head to look at her. He continued to advance, and said, firstly, you have a heaven-grade spirit root, and have now reached the 8th layer of Pali. You're only one step away from breaking through to gushing spring tier. Secondly, I don't need anyone to concoct alchemical pills for me. Thirdly, if I absolutely need someone to follow by my side, a beautiful woman is of course much more pleasing to the eyes than an old man. Lu Yutong couldn't help but be speechless, but this reason seemed to make her a little secretly delighted. Let's go home first. I still have to teach you 3 mysterious arts, Ling Han continued. Lu Yutong was instantly moved, and her footsteps quickened. This illness of inexplicable lethargy had been bothering her for far too many years. The two of them returned to the Ling family. As they walked, all the servants revealed strange expressions. They'd all heard about what had happened in the morning. The chief butler had actually been violently slapped by young Master Trashy. This kind of news would naturally spread throughout the entire Ling family in no time. Ling Han acted as if he hadn't seen anything, and brought Lu Yutong to his own room, where he began to teach Lu Yutong 3 mysterious arts. Aren't you afraid that I'll go back on my word? Before Ling Han revealed the cultivation technique, Lu Yutong suddenly asked. Will you? Ling Han countered with a question. Chapter 9. If it was half a day ago, Lu Yutong really might have burned the bridge after crossing the river, first swindling the cultivation technique into her hands, and then giving Ling Han some monetary compensation. Who asked Ling Han to disregard her noble status as the daughter of a wealthy family and insist on taking her as his follower? But now, she was hesitating. A woman's modesty made her want to leave Ling Han, but when she thought of his endless miracles, she also wanted to stay by Ling Han's side, to see where his limits were. Maybe, maybe not, who can say for sure? She gave an ambiguous answer. Ling Han laughed loudly. If Lu Yutong had solemnly vowed that she would be loyal to him in the future, he would not have believed her. However, as a heaven-tier elite, the alchemy emperor, how could he not be able to subdue a little girl like this? Take off your clothes, he said casually. Lu Yutong instantly revealed an angry expression. Could it be that Ling Han was going to use imparting a cultivation technique as a threat to force her to offer her body? Although she did not want to die, and very much wanted to cure her illness, if it came to using her body in exchange, then she would rather die. Don't misunderstand, Ling Han said with a smile. I only want to guide the circulation route of your origin power. When circulating this cultivation technique, the origin power will go through many strange passages, and it is not something that can be explained clearly with words. You should know that when it comes to the circulation of a cultivation technique, the slightest difference can lead to a great loss. There cannot be the slightest mistake. Lu Yutong couldn't help but be startled. What Ling Han said was not false. There were countless meridians in the human body, and as long as there was a slight difference in the circulation route of origin power, the effect would be as different as heaven and earth. The problem was, she was an unmarried young lady. Could she strip naked and let a man's fingers roam all over her body? She thought for a long time, and proposed a compromise. She would keep her undergarments, and Ling Han could not use his fingers. He would use chopsticks instead to guide the circulation of origin power. You go out first, Lu Yutong said, pointing to the outer room. Hey, this is my house, Ling Han said with a smile, but he still stood up and walked outside. He still had this little bit of elegance. After a long while, he heard Lu Yutong say, "You can come in." Ling Han walked into the room and saw Lu Yutong sitting on the bed with a sheet draped over her delicate body. Her beautiful hair cascaded down like a waterfall, making her look exceedingly alluring. What an enchanting stunner, Ling Han thought. Even with his picky judgment in his last life, he had to admit that this icy beauty's charm caused his heart to flutter. Lu Yutong bit her red lips with her pearly white teeth. Her beautiful eyes seemed to be filled with resentment and sorrow. Slowly, she took off the sheet and revealed her jade-like body. She only had a tube top on her upper body. Her white and tender skin was like fine jade, emitting an enchanting luster. She wore a pair of panties, but the trousers had been forcibly torn down from her thighs, revealing two slender and straight legs. A little bit more and she would be fat, and a little less and she would be thin. It could be said to be perfect, making one's heart beat faster. Seeing Ling Han's gaze sweep over, she couldn't help but feel shy. Two blushes appeared on her jade-like face, adding to her beauty. She was originally an icy beauty, but now that her face was flushed red, she was instantly seductive and flirtatious. Even with Ling Han's heaven-tier temperament from his previous life, his appetite was slightly aroused, and he wanted to devour this charming little vixen. But he immediately calmed his mind and said, "Sit cross-legged, I will teach you the first layer of the 3 mysterious arts." He recited it word by word. At first, Lu Yutong couldn't get into the mood. After all, she was almost naked in the same room as a man. But her heart of martial art quickly took over, and she listened attentively to Ling Han's chant and memorized it. Ling Han recited it very quickly, and Lu Yutong also displayed an astonishing talent. She almost couldn't forget it. Ling Han only recited it twice, and Lu Yutong had already memorized nearly 1,000 words of the chant. This was only the first step. Next, the circulation route of the origin energy was the key. Ling Han used his chopsticks as fingers and lightly moved them on Lu Yutong's delicate body, guiding the circulation of the other's origin energy. Once, twice, it was only 3 times, and Lu Yutong could already circulate her origin energy according to this new cultivation technique. She indeed lived up to her name of being a genius. Ling Han hurriedly walked out. This little vixen's charm was really not small. He seemed to have overestimated his own willpower. If he stayed any longer, it was very likely that he would take advantage of the situation and push down this alluring beauty. Since Lu Yutong had already started cultivating, then she definitely wouldn't wake up in a short period of time. Ling Han then sat down in the outer room and also began cultivating. However, he wasn't cultivating the 5 elements heaven grade skill, but the indestructible heaven scroll. Because his spirit base had not recovered, he didn't want to take any risks. If he injured his spirit base further, then it wouldn't be something that the element heart recover spirit powder could heal. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated like a bottomless pit, rapidly depleting the originally small amount of origin energy in his body. It tempered his muscles, meridians, and bones, advancing in a stronger direction. If he cultivated this to the extreme, his body would be indestructible. Even if a large star crashed into him, it was guaranteed that the large star would shatter, and he would be unaffected. Of course, he was currently too far away from this step. After only 5 minutes, the origin energy in his body was completely depleted. At this time, he swallowed a return origin pill, quickly replenishing the origin energy in his body, and then continued to cultivate. In the beginning, the return origin pill could bring out the greatest effect, but as he ate more and more, his body also developed a strong resistance to the effects of the pill, causing the effects of the pill to become worse and worse. In the end, after taking the last return origin pill, he couldn't even recover 1/10 of his origin energy. Ling Han stopped. Today was the end, and there wouldn't be any effect even if he continued cultivating. However, his improvement was very obvious. His muscles, meridians, and bones all became slightly stronger. According to his estimation, this kind of strength was already comparable to the 3rd layer of body refining tier. As expected of the Heaven's Scroll, awesome. In his last life, Ling Han had also practiced a few recovery techniques, such as Golden Body Technique and Monolith Technique, both of which allowed one's body to become stronger, but when compared to the effects of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, the difference was like that between heaven and earth. This was very normal. If the indestructible Heaven Scroll wasn't so awesome, how could a warrior of Heaven tier need tens of thousands of years to comprehend it, and it was only the 1st layer. However, cultivating this Heaven Scroll really consumes a lot of origin power, and it also requires a large amount of natural treasures to help temper the body, which will definitely slow down the progress of my cultivation. However, the power of this Heaven Scroll is too great. Even if my cultivation is a bit slower, it's worth it, since I have an immortal grade spirit base anyway. Let's not think about the highest tier of indestructible and indestructible for now. The 1st layer of the indestructible Heaven Scroll is also divided into 4 tiers, namely the Deadwood tier, Limestone tier, Iron Sheet tier, and Diamond tier. Reaching the Deadwood tier, the body will be like dead wood, and any attack will be like hitting a dead wood. It will hurt the dead wood, but won't harm the life force. Moreover, the body will be like dead wood, and no one will be able to tell that it's a living person. Reaching the Diamond tier, no matter how heavy the injury, one will be able to immediately heal it with a single thought. Severed limbs can also be regrown, it's practically like a divine art. Ling Han turned and walked towards the door of the inner room. The curtain was lifted, and a fairy-like girl walked out. Her pretty face had a faint blush, pretty, charming, and graceful. You've cultivated the 1st layer of the 3 mysterious arts to the extreme? Ling Han said, a little surprised. Lu Yutong nodded, not daring to meet Ling Han's gaze. A strange emotion rippled in her heart, as if some kind of unprecedented feeling was growing and growing. This young girl is really a genius, Ling Han thought. Chapter 10. 3 Mysterious Art had a total of 9 layers, corresponding to the 9 tiers of martial art. The 9th layer was the Heaven tier, the highest tier Ling Han had reached in his last life. None of the arts in the world could break through to the 10th tier, which was the part of the Shattering Void tier. This was also why Ling Han wanted to travel the world and explore all kinds of ancient sites. The 1st layer of 3 mysterious art corresponded to the body refining tier, a stage that Lu Yutong had passed long ago. It was naturally very easy for her to recultivate it now, just like a high school student doing junior high school homework. But the problem was, she actually finished recultivating the first layer of the art in such a short period of time. This talent was too strong, wasn't it? But thinking about it, Lu Yutong had 3 absolute meridians, and 3 mysterious art was developed for this kind of person, so it was normal that it was fast. Ling Han nodded and said, then I'll continue teaching you the second layer of the art. As long as you can cultivate the third layer to completion, you'll be able to completely suppress 3 absolute meridians and never be affected again. The third layer, in other words, had to reach the gushing spring tier. But Lu Yutong was now in the 8th layer of Pali, and already felt the opportunity to break through to the 9th layer, so she was only one step away from breaking through to the gushing spring tier. Lu Yutong couldn't help but blush again. Now that he was teaching her the second layer of the art, didn't that mean she had to take off her clothes again? Don't let your imagination run wild, Ling Han scolded. Lu Yutong couldn't help but glare at him fiercely. She wasn't imagining wild thoughts, she was afraid that Ling Han would think wild thoughts. The two returned to the inner chamber, and just like before, Lu Yutong took off her gown, revealing her alluring body almost naked in front of Ling Han. As the saying went, strangers the first time, familiarity the second. Although she was still very shy, it was much better than the first time. After Ling Han taught her the second layer of the art, it was almost night time. He ordered the servants to send 2 portions of dinner, ate a large portion for himself, and left a small portion for Lu Yutong. Women had small appetites, so a small half was enough. After about 3 hours, Lu Yutong once again walked out, and said in an extremely surprised tone, my current cultivation speed is actually 10 times faster than before. This meant that after she broke through to the 9th layer of Pali, she would probably only need less than 2 months to reach her peak condition, and then attempt to break through to gushing spring tier. Too fast. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. The 3 mysterious art is a heaven tier art. Heaven level art. Lu Yutong almost fainted. What did a high-grade heaven tier cultivation technique mean? Let's put it this way. The reason why the Lu family was able to become one of the 8 influential families in the imperial city was that the Lu family had the Rosy Cloud spell, which was a profound level medium rank cultivation technique. The reason why the Qi clan of the royal family was able to sit firmly on the throne of the world was because the Qi clan had the 7 Butchers art, which was a high-grade mystic level art. In other words, a black-grade high-level cultivation technique would be able to create an empire, and a black-grade middle-level cultivation technique would be able to allow a party to become a great clan of Rain country that would not decline for 1,000 years. Then, what was the significance of a heaven-level cultivation technique? It was indescribably precious. If Ling Han had said that he wanted to teach her a heaven-level cultivation technique right from the start, she would definitely think that he was crazy. Wasn't that so? If a small clan in a mere gray cloud town could take out a heaven-level cultivation technique, then wouldn't the whole world be thrown into chaos? But now, she had no choice but to believe it, because she had personally experienced it. This is a heaven-level cultivation technique, and you're teaching it to me just like that? Her heart trembled, and there was an indescribable throbbing in her heart. Ling Han smiled. This 3 mysterious art was indeed a heaven-level cultivation technique, but it could only be cultivated by those with 3 absolute meridians. It would be useless even if others obtained it, so he was naturally not afraid that Lu Yutong would teach it to others. Moreover, he had obtained the indestructible Heaven Scroll, which was a true supreme divine art. Even comprehending the first layer of the cultivation technique would require over 10,000 years of time. Compared to this, any heaven-level cultivation technique, Pei, was not even worth mentioning. Of course he would not say that, and said, you are my follower, and I am never stingy towards my own people. These words were not a lie. He had always been protective of his own people, and was even more generous towards his own people. Lu Yutong couldn't help but blush. From her perspective, the words, one of our own, had a different meaning to them. After a while, she said, don't worry, without your permission, I will not teach this cultivation technique to anyone. Up to you. Ling Han said. In any case, only 1/3 absolute meridians could appear every few thousand years, so even if she taught it to someone, it could also be lost in the long passage of time. For others, this was a cultivation technique that was even worse than a yellow-grade low-level cultivation technique, so who would keep it for a few thousand years? Lu Yutong could not help but feel a little disappointed. Just now, her heart had trembled. If Ling Han had coaxed her with more sweet words, she would definitely have a favorable impression of Ling Han. However, Ling Han did not have such intentions at all, so she had naturally missed a great opportunity. She walked to the table and began to eat. As she chewed and swallowed, she said, "From tomorrow onwards, I will be in seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of Pali, so I won't be able to follow you." "Ha, don't worry, don't worry. I don't have any plans to go anywhere in these 2 days. I will just wait for Zhu He Xian to send over the medicinal ingredients. Let's first treat my spirit root before anything else." Ling Han said. He really cherished this second life. Now that his spirit root was injured, he did not want to take the risk and destroy the foundation of martial art. Lu Yutong did not waste any time. After eating, she immediately started her seclusion to break through to the 9th layer of Pali. Ling Han had no choice but to let her use the inner room and move the bed to the outer room. Because of Lu Yutong's presence, although the 3 generations of Ling Chongquan hated Ling Han to the bone, they did not dare to have any crooked ideas. Ling Han also lived in seclusion, quietly waiting for Zhu He Xian to send over the medicinal ingredients and for Lu Yutong to come out of seclusion. Sure enough, Zhu He Xian did not break her promise. On the 4th day, she sent the medicinal ingredients that Ling Han needed. Of course, the old man also took the opportunity to ask Ling Han for advice. In fact, he had been wanting to come over for the past few days. However, in his eyes, Ling Han was a supreme grandmaster. How could he dare to disturb him if there was nothing important? However, Ling Han had no patience today. He quickly sent Zhu He Xian away. He wanted to immediately start concocting the medicine to repair his spirit root and once again embark on the path of cultivation. For Ling Han, concocting the medicine was naturally a piece of cake. Only 3 minutes later, he concocted the element heart recover spirit powder. He did not stay idle these 3 days. Other than cultivating the indestructible heaven scroll, he had naturally done all kinds of preparatory work. The medicine is too bitter, sigh. Ling Han sighed and drank the element heart recover spirit powder in one gulp. Not long after, a wave of heat came, and he instantly felt a burning sensation in his body. Looking inside his dantian, the injured spirit root was slowly recovering, and would be healed in at most half a day. During this period of time, he could do nothing but wait patiently. For a person who had slept for tens of thousands of years, half a day's wait was naturally a small matter. Slowly, in Ling Han's dantian, the 5 elements chaos lotus completely bloomed, and the Tao was natural, too wonderful for words. Chapter 11. Ling Han told Ling Dongxing about the despicable deeds that Ling Zhongquan and his son, as well as the grandfather and grandson, had done. Those 3 generations obviously would not let the matter rest, and would definitely try something. Ling Dongxing had to be prepared. I understand. Ling Dongxing appeared to be extremely confident. He and Ling Zhongquan had already been fighting head-on for more than 10 years, but Ling Zhongquan could only remain as the chief attendant, completely suppressed by him. In the past, Ling Dongxing had also been a prodigy of his generation, and had commanded the winds and clouds. If his spirit base had not been destroyed, what would a person like Ling Zhongquan be? He dares to bully my son. If I don't beat him up until he has to lie in bed for a month, I don't believe that Ling Han. His eyes were cold, and he said fiercely. Our old man is also a person who is protective of his own people. Ling Han chatted with his father for a while longer, and then left. As the clan master of a great clan, Ling Dongxing naturally had many matters to attend to. Moreover, he still had to give that old dog, Ling Zhongquan, a thrashing for daring to bully his own son when he was not around. Ling Han was not interested in how that old dog would be beaten up by Ling Dongxing. He returned to his own room, and began to ponder his next course of action. Cultivation could not do without the support of alchemical pills. In his last life, the reason why he was able to reach heaven tier within 200 years was because he himself was a genius of alchemy. However, even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. Although he had now grasped all the knowledge of alchemy, he still needed to have the necessary ingredients. And the higher the grade of the alchemical pill, the more expensive the ingredients needed to concoct it. To be honest, with the wealth of the Ling clan, in front of such ingredients, there could only be one word to describe it: poor. He had to do something. Otherwise, the speed of his cultivation would definitely not be able to reach the standard he expected. Simple, earn money. Ling Han temporarily thought of two methods. First, sell cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques. In his last life, he had memorized who knew how many top-notch secret techniques, and any one of them could be sold for an astronomical amount of wealth. But, this was not appropriate. Because the current Ling Han was too weak. If he still had the cultivation level of heaven tier, then if he took out a heaven-grade cultivation technique, others would naturally not dare to have any devious thoughts. But now, he would only become the target of others, who would force him to hand over even more cultivation techniques. If he wanted to sell them, he could only take out cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques that were about the same level as his current level of martial arts. Moreover, he could not sell them in large quantities. Then there was only the second method left, and that was to sell alchemical pills. This was his old profession. Moreover, alchemists were an extremely respected profession. If anyone dared to disrespect an alchemist, it would very easily incur the wrath of the masses, and anyone would have to think twice before acting. In the current Rain country, at least 80% of the alchemists were in the hands of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, and the remaining 20% were the esteemed guests of the various great clans and sects. The alchemical pills that they concocted were all consumed within the sect, and would not be sold outside. Lastly, there were some alchemists who were lone travelers, and did not work for anyone. When they ran out of money, they would concoct some alchemical pills and sell them for money, living a carefree life. For example, in Grey Cloud Town, the high-end alchemical pills were all in the hands of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, and people could only go there to buy them. As for the low-end alchemical pills, they would be distributed by the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to the two great clans in the town to be sold. This could be considered as I eat the meat, you drink the soup, and everyone would profit. After all, the two great clans were the local tyrants. These two great clans were the Ling clan and the Qing clan. Both great clans would be able to obtain 50% of the low-end alchemical pills from the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. But even if the two great clans only drank the soup, they would still earn a great deal in the field of alchemical pills. The business of alchemical pills was a highly profitable business, and this was also one of the reasons why alchemists were regarded as esteemed guests by the various great clans. If the great clans and sects did not have their own alchemists, then the expenditure on alchemical pills would be terrifyingly large. Ling Han did not want to spend too much time and effort on alchemy in this life, so he only wanted to be a solitary alchemist. If he ran out of money, he would just concoct some alchemical pills, as long as he had enough for his own use. It was decided then, he would use alchemy to support his martial arts. However, since Ling Dongxing had returned, Ling Han's freedom was also restricted, and he was immediately chased off to the academy by his old man. Of course, it was not Huyang Academy, but Grey Cloud Academy. Huyang Academy was established by the imperial family of Rain Country, and Grey Cloud Academy was also established by the nation. However, in terms of resources, the two could not be compared at all, and the difference was too great. However, Ling Dongxing still hoped that Ling Han would be able to amaze the world with a single feat in Grey Cloud Academy. He was a father, after all, and always wanted his son to excel and become the most successful person in the world. Ling Han naturally did not want to disappoint his father, so he could only go to the academy. In any case, he had nothing to do, so he might as well just go for a few days and be high profile for a bit, and satisfy his father's desire to see his son succeed in life. Then, Ling Dongxing would naturally not care about him anymore. Moreover, he also wanted to realize the long-cherished wish of his predecessor, and wash away the reputation of being a piece of trash. He left the academy, and Lu Yutong naturally followed him, arriving at Grey Cloud Academy together with him. However, it was not convenient for Lu Yutong to attend classes with him, so she wandered around the academy grounds. With her strength, she was not afraid that anyone would be attracted by her beauty and try to harm her. Ling Han strolled leisurely. It was not that he had to go to class, anyways, it was enough for him to come to the academy. He had come here because he respected his father, but he would not blindly follow every word that Ling Dongxing said. When he arrived at the martial arts field, he could not help but stop in his tracks. A strong throbbing sensation rose up within his body, causing him to involuntarily turn around and walk towards the center of the martial arts field. This was an obsession that came from his predecessor. His predecessor had a total of 2 things that he could not let go of. The first was naturally his father, and the second was a woman in Grey Cloud Academy. It would have been better if he had not come here, but now that he had, this obsession immediately became incomparably deep. His predecessor liked a woman called Shinzi Yan, and was a student of Grey Cloud Academy. Moreover, there was an extremely complicated entanglement between the two of them. As early as 7 years ago, when Shinzi Yan was only a 10-year-old little girl, she had already displayed an astonishing beauty. Ling Dongxing beat her to it, and the two of them were betrothed to each other when they were still children. Because the Ling clan was one of the 2 top clans in the city, and Ling Han was also the son of the clan head, the Shin clan naturally had no objections to this, and very happily agreed to this betrothal. But when Ling Han awoke his spirit base at the age of 12, and underwent a test, it was confirmed that he had a 5 elements mishmash spirit base. If it was just that, with the power of the Ling clan, the Shin clan would not dare to have any objections. The problem was, Shinzi Yan's spirit base was actually of Earth grade high level. Not only that, Shinzi Yan's talent in martial arts was also quite extraordinary, and she did not let down such a good spirit base. Her cultivation level soared, and she was viewed as a treasure by the higher-ups of the academy. They had always wanted to send her to Huyang Academy, because only there would her talent be able to be truly displayed. As she grew older, and as the gap between Shinzi Yan and Ling Han's cultivation level grew larger and larger, she finally proposed to the Ling clan to break off the engagement. Ling Dongxing was naturally unwilling to agree. This would not only damage the reputation of the Ling clan, it would also hurt his son's heart. But his predecessor still agreed, because he liked this woman to the core. Although they were already strangers, his predecessor still deeply liked this young girl, and had always been secretly paying attention to her, watching her closely. It was so strong that even though his predecessor was already dead, his body still moved instinctively, affecting the current Ling Han. I have to get rid of this obsession. Otherwise, it could become an inner demon in the future, and affect my progress in cultivation, Ling Han thought. As a former warrior of Heaven Tier, he naturally knew how terrifying an inner demon could be. Then I'll go see her once. After I see her, she will be her, and I will be me, Ling Han said in his mind, as if he was negotiating with his predecessor. Chapter 12. Bang, 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 bang. At this moment, there was a hurried knock on the door. Ling Han walked over and opened the door, only to see a manservant. He had already ordered people not to disturb him unless there was something important, so he asked, "What happened?" "Master is back," the manservant hurriedly said. Ling Han's body immediately surged with excitement. He urgently wanted to see that man, this was his body's instinctive reaction. "Father," he murmured. He had inherited this body, and also inherited the corresponding bloodline and responsibility. He turned his head and smiled at Lu Yutong, saying, "Yutong, come with me to see father." Lu Yutong's pretty face immediately turned red. She felt like an ugly daughter-in-law seeing her in-laws. Tui tui, she hurriedly cursed in her heart. Why did she have such a feeling? There was nothing between her and this guy. "Where is father?" Ling Han asked the manservant. "The main hall." Ling Han walked towards the main hall. His footsteps became faster and faster. From walking to running, there was a strong childlike feeling in his heart. The moment he rushed into the main hall, he saw a man in his 40s standing upright, tall, handsome, and emitting a strong aura. At this moment, Ling Han couldn't tell if it was because of his body's instincts, or because he longed for family too much as an orphan in his previous life. His eyes involuntarily became moist, and the blood connection made it easy for him to call out, "Father." "Han, Ling Dongxing laughed loudly, quickly walked over, and hugged Ling Han, but immediately revealed a look of surprise, and said, "Why are you still at home? Shouldn't you be going to Huyang University?" This was fatherly love. Ling Han somewhat greedily enjoyed his father's hug. Although in his previous life, with Ling Dongxing's cultivation, he didn't even have the qualifications to look him in the eye, now he was so excited that tears welled up in his eyes. He finally completely put down the identity of his previous life, and enjoyed his new life. He was no longer a lone traveler without family. He had a father, a loving father who risked his life for him. He wiped the corner of his eyes and shook his head. "I don't want to go to Huyang University." "Why?" asked Ling Dongxing. He knew that his only son's spiritual roots were too weak. Although he had put in a lot of effort, his cultivation was still unable to increase. There was nothing he could do about it. The reason why he tried so hard to send Ling Han into Huyang University was to use the school's endless resources to forcefully raise Ling Han to the Pali realm. This way, he would be able to close his eyes after 100 years. However, Ling Han actually said that he didn't want to go to Huyang University, which made him angry. There was nothing that could be done if Ling Han's talent was poor, but if he didn't even have the desire to improve himself, then there was really no cure for him. Ling Han naturally couldn't say that he had been a heaven-tier elite in his previous life. Who knew how many supreme-grade cultivation methods and martial arts techniques were stored in his mind? He had even obtained a heaven scroll that required 10,000 years to comprehend the first layer. What could he learn in Huyang University? If he really said that, Ling Dongxing would probably think that he was bewitched. "Yutong, come. This is my father." When his gaze fell on Lu Yutong, he quickly waved his hand and said, changing the topic, "Yutong greets the head of the Ling family." Lu Yutong bowed gracefully and performed the etiquette of a junior. Ling Dongxing, however, was stunned. He didn't recognize Lu Yutong, but he could tell that she was the same as him, in the Pali realm. Moreover, in terms of cultivation level, they were both in the 9th layer of Pali. Martial arts practitioners could usually only have the cultivation of people whose cultivation level was lower than their own. Ling Han was an exception. After all, he had the divine sense of a heaven-tier elite from his previous life. Since that was the case, she could completely get along with him as equals. There was no need for her to perform the etiquette of a junior. Could it be? He suddenly looked pleasantly surprised. Could it be because of Ling Han? This girl liked her son. When he thought of that, he couldn't help but feel happy. This girl only looked to be 17 or 18 years old, yet she was already in the 9th layer of Pali. Her talent was definitely top-notch. To be able to get such a good companion, so what if Ling Han's cultivation level was slightly lower? No wonder this brat didn't want to go to Huyang University. He probably didn't want to be separated from her. This brat was also a romantic. Stinking brat. Ling Dongxing first glared at Ling Han, then asked Lu Yutong, "Miss, where are you from?" "The imperial city's Lu clan," Lu Yutong answered. Ling Dongxing was shocked. Although there were many people with the surname Lu in the imperial city's Lu clan, there was only one Lu clan in the imperial city, one of the 8 strongest clans in the whole of Rain country aside from the imperial family. Such a powerful background. Wait, you should be someone from Huyang University, and have come to bring Han, to the academy, right? He suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Otherwise, how could a member of the imperial city's Lu clan possibly appear here? Yes, Ling clan matriarch, Lu Yutong said softly. Ling Dongxing couldn't help but look towards Ling Han, thinking that his son's talent in martial art wasn't good enough, but his ability to pick up girls was really amazing. She was only here to receive him, so how did he manage to capture her heart? Moreover, it had only taken him a few days to do so. He had the elegance he had in the past. But since Lu Yutong was a member of Huyang University, why wouldn't Ling Han go with her? The two of them would both be studying in Huyang University in the future, so they wouldn't have to worry about living apart. Father, I want to accompany you for a while longer. We can go to the academy in the future anyway, Ling Han said. He didn't want to scare his father, so he planned to take things slowly and let Ling Dongxing slowly accept his changes. Ling Dongxing laughed, and said, Good, good, good. Anyways, the person who was supposed to receive him was here, so Ling Han could go to Huyang University at any time. He patted Ling Han's shoulder, and just as he was about to say something, he couldn't help but look surprised, and said, Han, you've broken through? Finally, there's someone to share her shock with, Lu Yutong thought. Yes, I've broken through. Ling Han nodded. I've only been gone for about 10 days, and not only have you broken through, you've even broken through 2 levels. Ling Dongxing was still surprised. This kind of improvement speed was simply inconceivable. If Ling Han had only broken through 1 level, then it could still be said that Ling Han had accumulated a lot of experience, and had been trapped in this level for too long, so he finally had a breakthrough. But 2 small levels, this was simply frightening. Was his son really trash? If he was called trash, then were there any geniuses in the world? Seeing the twitching of Ling Dongxing's mouth, Lu Yutong immediately felt comforted in her heart. This kind of shock couldn't always be borne by her alone. Yes, it's all right. Ling Han nodded. Ling Dongxing and Lu Yutong rolled their eyes at the same time. This was only all right. However, Ling Dongxing immediately laughed again, and said, Ha ha ha, in the future, who would still dare to say that my son is trash? Which father didn't want their son to have a bright future? However, because of the limitations of his spirit root, Ling Han could only be trash. But now, Ling Dongxing seemed to have found a glimmer of hope. Father, I've had some fortuitous encounters. Ling Han said. Ling Dongxing nodded. If it wasn't for these fortuitous encounters, how could Ling Han have achieved such a level of advancement? However, this fortuitous encounter wasn't just an ordinary one. Chapter 13. Father, I definitely won't disappoint you in the future. I'll only make you proud of me, said Ling Han. Good, good, good. As expected of my, Ling Dongxing's, son. Ling Dongxing was also moved to the point of tears. Although he did not know what kind of fortuitous encounter Ling Han had, the current him was only happy, excited, and delighted. He wanted nothing more than to announce to the whole world that his, Ling Dongxing's, son was not a piece of trash. For some reason, the corners of Lu Yutong's eyes became slightly moist. Father, I have something to tell you. Ling Han pulled Ling Dongxing to their courtyard and let Lu Yutong rest first. There were some things that could only be said to his father. After all, Lu Yutong still hadn't obtained his true approval and trust. What is it that you're being so secretive about? Ling Dongxing asked with a smile. He was also a bit curious because even Lu Yutong couldn't hear what was being said. He naturally thought that Ling Han and Lu Yutong were a couple. Ling Han said, Father, let me see your spirit root. Spirit roots could be manifested using special methods, and once it reached the Pali realm, it could directly project a phantom image. There was no need for any other methods. Ling Dongxing couldn't help but frown. Why? I want to find the most suitable cultivation method for you according to your spirit root, said Ling Han. Ling Dongxing couldn't help but be speechless. How many cultivation methods did his son have in his hands? He could actually choose the most suitable cultivation method according to a person's spirit root. If he hadn't just witnessed Ling Han's miracle, he wouldn't have believed it even if he was beaten to death. He shook his head but didn't say anything. Father. Ling Han looked at Ling Dongxing. He realized that there seemed to be more to this than meets the eye. Ling Dongxing sighed and said, no matter what kind of cultivation technique it is, my spirit base is already crippled. What? Ling Han exclaimed softly, but he immediately looked angry. Who did it? Ling Dongxing was in the Pali realm, so it was impossible for his spirit root to be crippled at birth. Naturally, it was crippled by someone else. Ling Han had always been a protective person. Moreover, it was his father this time. Naturally, he was furious. This has something to do with your mother. Ling Dongxing sighed, and a wisp of tenderness appeared on his face. There was also regret and rage, and it was an extremely complicated expression. Mother. Ling Han murmured. In his memory, Ling Dongxing had never told him about his mother. Every time he asked about it, Ling Dongxing would immediately change the topic. He only knew that his mother passed away not long after he was born. In the past, I thought that your mother would be buried in my heart forever, but now. Ling Dongxing paused. Han, if you can reach the Pali state in 3 years, I will tell you about your mother. She did not die. Ling Han's heart immediately surged with intense excitement. The heavens were so kind to him. Not only did they give him a father's love, they even gave him a mother's love. He laughed loudly and said, what's so difficult about that? I don't need 3 years, I can break through to the Pali realm in 3 months. Ling Dongxing was moved. From the 4th layer of body refinement realm to the Pali realm in 3 months, was that possible? Even he, who was once known as the #1 genius in Grey Cloud Town, still needed 2 years to complete such a leap. But thinking about it, Ling Han broke through 2 small realms in 7 days, and reaching the Pali realm in 3 months, it did not seem impossible. He was stunned for a moment and said, all right, if you can break through to the Pali realm in 3 months, I will tell you everything, and you will go and rescue your mother. Rescue meant that his mother was currently trapped somewhere. No wonder Ling Dongxing kept lying to him about his mother's early death. It was a white lie. Ling Han nodded, but then revealed a smile and said, Father, don't you want to rescue mother yourself? Ling Dongxing's fierce eyes widened, revealing an excited expression, but immediately dimmed. He said, my spirit base is already destroyed, and I can only recover my origin power by taking return origin pill. I can't advance any further, and to rescue your mother, I need to at least reach the flower blossom tier. Other than the legendary shattering void tier, martial art was divided into 9 tiers, body refinement tier, Pali tier, gushing spring tier, spiritual ocean tier, spiritual pedestal tier, flower blossom tier, spiritual infant tier, deity transformation tier, and heaven tier. Flower blossom tier was the 6th major tier. What kind of concept was that? The strongest elite of the 8 great clans of Rain Country was only in the spiritual pedestal tier, and it was said that the imperial family had an ultimate elite of the flower blossom tier who guarded the center of power, which was why the 8 great clans were so cautious, not daring to have the slightest bit of disloyalty. Once one reached the flower blossom tier, one would be able to establish a nation and pass it down for generations. However, for Ling Han, a former elite of the heaven tier, so what if he was in the flower blossom tier? In this life, his various conditions were even more outstanding: immortal grade spirit base, indestructible heaven scroll, and he had already passed all 9 tiers of martial art once, so he wouldn't encounter any obstacles at all. His mastery of alchemy could provide him with all kinds of alchemical pills. 30 years, at most 50 years, and he would be able to return to the pinnacle. Ling Han smiled and said, "Father, spirit base is actually a part of the body, and there's no reason it can't be repaired. Let me." Ling Dongxing looked at Ling Han for a while, then nodded and said, "Okay." He folded his arms in front of him, and with a thought, the spirit base in his dantian was projected. Ling Han was slightly surprised, because Ling Dongxing's spirit base was shockingly heaven-grade low-level, broken-edge sword, metal element. No wonder even though Ling Dongxing's spirit base had long been destroyed, he was still in the 9th layer of Pali. That was because his cultivation speed was very fast, and he had long reached this level. However, now that the broken-edge sword had lost its blade, there was only a tiny bit of sword hilt left, which basically couldn't absorb any more spiritual qi. It could be said that it was completely destroyed. Once the spirit base was destroyed, there was no possibility for martial art to advance further. This was not a problem for Ling Han. He said, "Father, your spirit base can still be repaired, but I currently don't have such medicinal ingredients, so I need some time." There was really hope. Ling Dongxing couldn't help but clench his fists. If it was possible, he obviously wanted to personally rescue his wife from the abyss of suffering, but because his spirit base was destroyed, he could only place his hopes on his son. At first, when Ling Han's spirit base awakened and was tested to be a 5 elements disarray spirit base, Ling Dongxing was indescribably disappointed and pained. From then on, he also gave up on the thought and lied to Ling Han that his wife had died, so he would bear all the pain and longing alone. "Han, is what you said true?" he said with a trembling voice. "Of course it's true." Ling Han said solemnly, "Give me 3 years, no, 2 years, and I will definitely find the medicinal ingredients for father to refine into a pill to repair father's spirit base." Ling Dongxing was filled with heroic spirit and said, "All right, when the time comes, we will join hands and rescue your mother, so that our family can be reunited." "Yes." Ling Han nodded. "However, you still have to obediently go to Huyang University." Ling Dongxing suddenly changed the topic. Ling Han couldn't help but feel depressed. He had already shown such a sharp edge, why did his father still not believe him, insisting that he go to Huyang University? But his father was thinking for his sake, and it was out of good intentions. If he went, then so be it. In any case, it didn't matter where he cultivated. Moreover, Grey Cloud Town was too small, and it couldn't provide him with the cultivation resources he needed. Chapter 14. Ling Han told Ling Dongxing about the despicable deeds of Ling Chongquan, his father, and his grandson. Those 3 generations obviously would not let it go, and they would definitely play some tricks, so Ling Dongxing had to be prepared. "I understand." Ling Dongxing appeared to be very confident. He and Ling Chongquan had been fighting head-on for more than 10 years, but Ling Chongquan could only be a head deacon, and was completely suppressed by him. Ling Dongxing had once been a proud son of heaven, and if his spirit root had not been destroyed, people like Ling Chongquan would be nothing. He dares to bully my son, I will beat him until he has to lie in bed for a month, or I will not believe that. Ling. His gaze was cold, and he said fiercely. "My old man is also a person who is protective of his own people, to my liking." Ling Han chatted with his father for a while more before leaving. As the master of a large clan, Ling Dongxing naturally had many things to do. Moreover, he still had to beat up that old dog Ling Chongquan, who dared to bully his son when he was not around. Ling Han was not interested in how that old dog would be beaten up by Ling Dongxing. He returned to his own room, and began to think about what to do next. Cultivation could not be separated from the support of alchemical pills. In his previous life, the reason why he could reach the heaven tier within 200 years was because he was a genius in alchemy. However, even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. Although he now had all the knowledge of alchemy, he still needed to have materials for it. And the higher the level of the alchemical pill, the more expensive the materials needed. To be honest, The wealth of the Ling family in front of such materials could only be described with one word: poor. He had to do something, or his cultivation speed would definitely not reach the expected level. Simple: make money. Ling Han temporarily thought of two ways. First, sell cultivation methods and martial arts techniques. In his previous life, he did not know how many top-notch secret techniques he had memorized, and any one of them could be exchanged for an astronomical amount of wealth. However, this was not appropriate, because the current Ling Han was too weak. If he was still in the heaven tier, then taking out a heaven-grade cultivation method would naturally make others not dare to have any crooked thoughts. But now, he would only be targeted by others, forcing him to hand over more of his cultivation techniques. Even if he wanted to sell it, he could only sell a cultivation technique or martial technique that was similar to his current level of martial art. Moreover, he could not sell it in large quantities. In that case, there was only the second method, and that was to sell the pills. This was his old profession. An alchemist was an extremely respected profession. If anyone dared to be disrespectful to an alchemist, it was extremely easy to incite public anger, so anyone would have to think twice before acting. In the current Rain country, at least 80% of the alchemists were in the hands of Tianyiji, and the remaining 20% were the esteemed guests of the various great clans and sections. The alchemical pills that they concocted were all consumed within the sect, and would not be sold at all. Finally, there were some alchemists who were lone travelers and did not work for anyone. When they ran out of money, they would concoct some alchemical pills and sell them for money, living a carefree life. For example, in Grey Cloud Town, the high-end alchemical pills were all in the hands of Tianyiji, so they could only go there to buy them. As for the low-end alchemical pills, Tianyiji would distribute them to the two great clans in the town for sale. It could be said that I eat the meat, you drink the soup, and everyone would profit. After all, the two great clans were the local tyrants. These two great clans were the Ling family and the Qing family. Both great clans could obtain 50% of the low-end alchemical pills from Tianyiji. But even if the two great clans only drank the soup, they would still earn a lot from alchemical pills. Alchemical pills were a highly profitable industry, and this was also one of the reasons why alchemists were esteemed guests of the various great clans. If the great clans and sects did not have their own alchemists, then the expenditure on alchemical pills would be terrifyingly high. In this life, Ling Han did not want to put too much effort into alchemy, so he only wanted to be a lone alchemist. When he ran out of money, he would concoct some alchemical pills, as long as he had enough. It was decided to use alchemical pills to nourish his martial arts. However, since Ling Dongxing had returned, Ling Han's freedom was also restricted, and he was immediately chased away by his father to the academy. Of course, it was not Huyang University, but Sangyun College. Huyang University was established by Rain country royalty, and Sangyun College was also established by the country. It was just that in terms of resources, the two could not be compared at all. The difference was too big, too big. However, Ling Dongxing still hoped that Ling Han could amaze the world with a single brilliant feat in Sangyun College. He was a father, after all, and he always wanted his son to excel and become the most promising person. Naturally, Ling Han did not want to disappoint his father, so he could only go to the academy. Since he had nothing to do anyway, he would just go for a few days and be high profile, and satisfy his father's desire to see his son succeed. Then, Ling Dongxing would naturally not care about him anymore. Moreover, he also wanted to fulfill his predecessor's long-cherished wish, to wash away the reputation of being a wastrel. He went out, and Lu Yutong naturally followed him to Sangyun College. However, it was not convenient for Lu Yutong to go to class with him, so she walked around the academy. With her strength, she was not afraid of anyone harboring ill intentions towards her. Ling Han strolled leisurely. He did not have to go to class, anyways, it was enough for him to come to the academy. He came here because he respected his father, but he would not blindly follow Ling Dongxing's every word. When he arrived at the martial arts field, he could not help but stop in his tracks. His body gave birth to a strong throbbing, causing him to involuntarily turn around and walk towards the martial arts field. This was the obsession of his predecessor. The predecessor had a total of 2 things that he could not let go of. The first was naturally his father, and the second was a woman in Sungin College. It would have been better if he had not come here, but after he came, this obsession immediately became incomparably deep. The predecessor liked a woman, Shin Zian, who was a student in Sungin College, and there was also an extremely complicated entanglement between the two. As early as 7 years ago, when Shin Zian was only a 10-year-old girl, she had already displayed astonishing beauty, and Ling Dongxing had beaten her to it, and Ling Han had arranged a child betrothal. Because the Ling family was one of the 2 top families in the city, and Ling Han was also the son of the family head, the Shin family naturally did not have any objections to this, and very happily agreed to this marriage. However, when Ling Han awakened his spiritual roots at the age of 12, and after a test, it was confirmed that he had 5 elements mixed spiritual roots. If that was the case, with the power of the Ling family, the Shin family would not dare to have any objections. The problem was that Shin Zian's spiritual roots were earth-level high-grade. Not only that, but Shin Zian's talent in martial art was also quite extraordinary, and she did not let such a good spiritual root down. Her cultivation soared all the way, and she was regarded as a treasure by the higher-ups of the college. They had always wanted to send her to Huyang University, where her talent could truly be displayed. As she grew older, and as the gap between Shin Zian and Ling Han's realms grew wider, she finally proposed to the Ling family to break off the engagement. Of course, Ling Dongxing was unwilling to agree, as this would not only damage the reputation of the Ling family, but also hurt his son's heart. However, the predecessor agreed, as he liked this woman to the bone. Although they were already strangers, the predecessor still deeply liked this young girl, and had always secretly paid attention to and watched her. It was so strong that even though the predecessor was already dead, his body moved instinctively, and it affected the current Ling Han. I have to get rid of this obsession, otherwise it may become an inner demon in the future, and affect my progress, Ling Han said in his heart. As a former expert of the celestial realm, he naturally knew how scary inner demons were. Then I'll go see her. After I see her, from then on, she will be her, and I will be me, Ling Han said in his heart, as if he was negotiating with the predecessor. Chapter 15. If you don't want to beg for mercy, then just continue lying like this. In any case, you won't be tired lying down, Ling Han said calmly. He had always been one to respect others tenfold in kind, but if he was provoked by others, then he would return the favor tenfold. Since Qing Xiang and his brother wanted to bully him, then he would trample on the 2 of them until there was not a single piece of skin left on them, and they would become complete laughingstocks. Not tired lying down. Indeed, it was not tiring to lie down, but if there was still a foot stepping on his face, then this was no longer a question of whether he was tired or not. Qing Xiang gritted his teeth tightly, so hard that blood came out. Ka, 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 his knuckles cracked as he clenched them. If it was possible, he really wanted to tear Ling Han into pieces, but now he could only lower his proud head, and say, "I'm sorry, please spare me." Your voice was too soft, I couldn't hear you, Ling Han said calmly. I'm sorry, please spare me. Qing Xiang suddenly shouted loudly. When these words left his mouth, he felt as if his whole person was about to break down. What pride, dignity, and face of the young master of the Qing clan. All of it had turned into bubbles in this one plea for mercy. In the future, be more sensible. There are some people that you cannot afford to offend, Ling Han said, and relaxed his foot. You should be glad that I am still relatively easy to talk to now. This was still called relatively easy to talk to. Everyone was speechless. Qing Xiang was not Qing Hao, he was the young master of the Qing clan. To humiliate him so publicly like this was equivalent to giving the whole Qing clan a slap in the face. This was definitely not going to end well. There would definitely be a battle between the Qin clan and the Ling clan, and it might even turn into a bloody battle between the two great clans, which would evolve into a great chaos. Shen Ziyan bit down hard on her red lips, her emotions so complicated that it was hard to describe. They were both in the 9th layer of body refining tier, but there would be a huge gap between their battle prowess. For example, she had defeated many veteran martial artists in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so even if Ling Han was able to defeat Qing Xiang, it did not mean that he would also be able to defeat her. But the problem was, what cultivation level was Ling Han at now? When this guy also reached the 9th layer of body refining tier, then who in the entire body refining tier would be a match for him? Invincible among those of the same cultivation level, the battle of a king. No, she definitely would not regret it. This was a piece of trash that she had rejected a few years ago, a piece of trash that could only look up to her for the rest of his life. Ling Han and Lu Yutong walked side by side out of the martial arts field, and the two of them began to wander around the academy. When they were tired from walking, they sat down under a large tree and leaned against the tree trunk. Neither of them spoke. After a while, Lu Yutong finally could not hold it in any longer, and said, "I never thought that your taste would be so bad, liking that kind of shallow and arrogant girl." Ling Han could not help but laugh loudly. He turned his head and said, "My little female attendant, are you jealous?" Who would be jealous? Lu Yutong's beautiful face could not help but flush red, making her appear all the more beautiful and alluring. "Don't think too highly of yourself." Hey, is it appropriate to say that about your master?" Ling Han said with a smile. It was quite interesting to tease this little female attendant when he had nothing better to do. Lu Yutong rolled her eyes at him, but very quickly changed the topic, and said, "Do you plan to stay in Grey Cloud Town in the future?" This place was really too small, and would not be able to accommodate this dragon at all. Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, "After a while, I'll go to Huyang Academy. Father hopes that I can go there and trample on the geniuses there." Lu Yutong was instantly speechless, and said, "You can't even defeat me now, and you want to trample on all the geniuses in Huyang Academy? You have to know that I am not the strongest in Huyang Academy. You'll know when the time comes." Ling Han did not boast anymore. Only he knew what kind of terrifying potential he possessed. When the sun set, the two of them returned to the Ling clan residence. Damn brat. When they walked into the main hall, it was Ling Dongxing who was striding towards them, his expression very stern. Ling Han had thought that Ling Dongxing had found out about him skipping classes today, and was just about to say something when he saw Ling Dongxing charge towards him and hug him tightly. Laughing loudly, he said, "You've defeated the two brats of the Qin clan, and yet you didn't immediately come back to tell your father? Let me be happy too." Ling Han let out a sigh of relief, and said, "Then how did father find out about it afterwards? This is not a small matter. It's been so long, how could I possibly not know about it?" Ling Dongxing stopped laughing, and said seriously, Han, you've really grown up. You're only in the 4th layer of body refining tier, yet you're able to defeat someone in the 9th layer of body refining tier. However, this is really too shocking. I'm worried that some people will use all sorts of methods to get rid of you." Ling Han nodded. Everyone would only admire geniuses, but the current him was no longer at the level of geniuses. He was so monstrous that it was inconceivable. "I've already spread the news that you're actually in the 7th layer of body refining tier. Previously, you were just pretending to keep a low profile," Ling Dongxing continued. This kind of explanation was actually full of loopholes. Keeping a low profile and being a piece of trash were two completely different things. But compared to someone in the 4th layer of body refining tier being able to defeat someone in the 9th layer of body refining tier, this kind of explanation was still more acceptable, right? Moreover, the power that Ling Han had displayed in the end was indeed that of the 7th layer of body refining tier. Thus, this kind of explanation was even more convincing. You don't have to go to the academy tomorrow, in case someone finds out about you, Ling Dongxing said. Anyone in the element gathering tier would be able to tell Ling Han's cultivation level at a glance, and his lies would immediately be exposed. This was exactly what Ling Han wanted. But the problem was, not only could he not go to the academy, he could not even leave his house. That was because he had played too big of a game today. There would definitely be a considerable number of people in Grey Cloud Town who would be interested in him, and it was not impossible for them to keep an eye on him in the vicinity of the Ling clan residence. There was only one way, and that was for his cultivation level to truly reach the 7th layer of body refining tier. Then the fake news that Ling Dongxing had spread would become real news. Since he could not leave his house anyways, Ling Han decided to focus on his cultivation. Ling Dongxing naturally gave his full support to this idea. At Ling Han's request, he provided a large amount of money, while Ling Han sent Lu Yutong to purchase the medicinal ingredients. He wanted to personally concoct alchemical pills. The alchemical pill that Ling Han wanted to concoct was small cloud water pill. This pill could greatly increase the cultivation speed of a martial artist in body refining tier. Although it could be sold, its medicinal effects were too poor. Ling Han had eaten one before, and that pill could at most only reach half the standard of the alchemical pill that he had concocted. Money made things easier, so Lu Yutong very quickly bought the medicinal ingredients that Ling Han needed, as well as an alchemy furnace. Concocting pills at the 4th layer of body refining tier is a little difficult. Generally speaking, only those who had reached the 7th layer of body refining tier could begin concocting alchemical pills. Because there was not enough origin power to support them, they would not be able to continue halfway through concocting alchemical pills, and would naturally fail. Come, I'll have to swallow return origin pills while I concoct alchemical pills. He skillfully sorted out the medicinal ingredients. The speed at which his hands moved was ridiculously fast, causing Lu Yutong, who was standing by the side, to be dazzled. At this moment, she finally believed that Ling Han knew how to concoct alchemical pills, and did not merely know the basics of alchemy. Was there anything that this guy did not know how to do? Ling Han threw the medicinal ingredients into the alchemy furnace, but he did not put all of them in, only a third of them. Then, with a flick of his right hand, with a chi sound, his hand actually burst into flames. Drawing fire, this was the most basic requirement for an alchemist, and also why every alchemist had to have a fire spirit base. Chapter 16. Ling Han, don't go too far. Cheng Hao said with his head held high. This was something he definitely could not concede. Ling Han smiled eerily and said, I was really afraid that you'd agree and I'd lose the reason to kill you. This guy wanted to kill him. Cheng Hao suddenly felt his whole body go cold. He looked at Ling Han and saw that the other's face was full of killing intent. It was obvious that he was not joking. He couldn't help but shiver and say, do you want to provoke a bloody war between the two great families? Do you want to become the eternal sinner of the Ling family? A puny Qing family, do you think you're qualified to flop around in front of me? Ling Han said disdainfully. If your Qing family dares to make a move, I'll destroy you all. Hung, the surrounding people were in an uproar. It must be known that the Ling family and the Qing family were both great families in Grey Cloud Town. Their strength was about the same. Once they fought, both sides would definitely suffer. Therefore, even though both families wanted to destroy the other and monopolize Grey Cloud Town, neither side dared to make a move. Ling Han, this famous trash, actually said that he wanted to destroy the Qing family. Wasn't this a joke? But at this moment, Ling Han's face was filled with a murderous aura, and there was an indescribable might exuding from his whole body. For no reason at all, everyone was rendered speechless. They only felt that this young man was no longer the trash they knew. So much so that the eyes of some girls were already emitting red light. So manly, it made their legs go weak. You're talking big. There's no need for anyone else. My brother can single-handedly suppress you. Cheng Hao shouted, his face full of dissatisfaction. In his eyes, Ling Han was just a toy. He didn't know how many times he and his brother Qing Xiang had bullied him. Now that he was being suppressed by Ling Han, he couldn't accept it in a million ways. Pa! Ling Han slapped him across the face and said coldly, "Do you really want to die?" If the Qing family wanted revenge, he did not mind casually exterminating the Qing family. With the respect that Zhu Hexian had for him now, it would naturally be a small matter for him to make a move. And though Zhu Hexian's talent in martial art was not that great, she was at least in gushing spring tier. If she wanted to exterminate the entire Qing family, it would naturally be a piece of cake. So if the Qing family really wanted to court death, he didn't mind using Zhu Hexian's power. Cheng Hao couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. In front of Ling Han, he felt an incomparable pressure, as well as the threat of death. This youth was no longer the trash that he could bully and humiliate, but a terrifying god of death. Pa! His legs involuntarily weakened, and he knelt on the ground. In the face of life and dignity, he abandoned his dignity without the slightest hesitation. If he died, everything would be over. He really knelt. The whole crowd was in an uproar. Cheng Hao was the second young master of the Qing family, and to a large extent, represented the Qing family, but now he actually knelt. Furthermore, the person he knelt to was the enemy of the Qing family. This could practically be nailed to the Qing family's monument of shame. Speaking of which, so Cheng Hao was also someone who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Why hadn't they discovered this before? When they thought about it again, this was quite normal. Cheng Hao always had the halo of the second young master of the Qing family, so who dared to oppose him? Then naturally, it was impossible for them to discover that under his arrogant and domineering appearance, he was actually a coward. However, Ling Han was too domineering, actually forcing the second young master of the Qing family to kneel. Wasn't he afraid of provoking a war between the two great clans? So handsome. Quite a number of girls became infatuated, and were already screaming. Ling Han, have you had enough? Cheng Hao clenched his teeth. Right now, he only had one thought, and that was to leave this place, and then call his brother to kill his way back. He wanted to take back all the dignity he had lost, all the humiliation he had suffered. Crawl out, said Ling Han indifferently. What? Cheng Hao thought he had heard wrong. Pa! Ling Han kicked Cheng Hao's back, forcing him to use his hands to prop himself up and lie on the ground. Ling Han, you dare to humiliate me like this? I'm going to kill you, kill you. Cheng Hao was about to go crazy. Kneeling was already a great humiliation, not to mention that he had to lie on the ground and crawl out. So what if I humiliate you? Trash, said Ling Han coldly. Hadn't the Qing family brothers humiliated him enough in the past? The Qing family brothers dared to do this because they were stronger than the previous generation. And this kind of fight between the younger generation, adults definitely couldn't participate, otherwise it would really be a joke. As long as they didn't cripple or kill them, this was the bottom line. Either crawl out or die here. Make your choice, said Ling Han. Too domineering. Was this really the Ling Han they knew? Everyone was dumbfounded. Previously, they had all laughed at Ling Han for being a trash, but which trash dared to force the second son of the Qing family to kneel and crawl like a dog in front of everyone? Awesome! Awesome! Cheng Hao was sweating profusely. He didn't want to be the sinner of his family, and he didn't want to lose face in front of everyone. But in the face of death, his willpower was simply too weak to withstand a single blow. Very quickly, he moved his hands and crawled up from the ground. Ha 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 ha. The surrounding people laughed. Immediately, as if it was contagious, more people laughed along. The second young master of the Qing family crawled like a dog. This was not something that could be seen every day. Cheng Hao's tears immediately gushed out. He clenched his fists tightly and swore in his heart that he would definitely kill Ling Han. He had to make him crawl out more than 10 steps, then immediately prop himself up from the ground and rush out of the martial arts arena. He wanted to find his brother, Qing Xiang, and kill Ling Han. Kill! Kill! Clap, clap, clap. The sound of applause attracted everyone's attention. Everyone quieted down and looked at the slender and beautiful woman. Shen Zian stopped and said, I have to admit that this was a very wonderful performance. However, if you want to move me like this, you are really delusional. Don't think that I don't know what you are planning. Unfortunately, the gap between you and me is too big. You are not even worthy of a finger of mine. Being liked by someone like you is simply a humiliation to me. You think you are an idiot. Ling Han shook his head. For the sake of his predecessor, he was too lazy to argue. With my martial arts talent, I will definitely be able to shake the world in the future. As a woman, I will be able to create miracles, Shen Ziyan said proudly. You don't need to say anything more. I know that everything you do is just to attract my interest. But it's a pity that I will never look at a nobody like you. Our relationship is already over. I don't mind telling you that I have already received an invitation from Huyang University. After the new year, I will become a disciple of Huyang University. Even a piece of trash like you dares to like me. You are not worthy, not worthy, not worthy. Well, she had said everything she wanted to say. Liking her? Yes, that was natural. She was beautiful and had outstanding talent in martial art. It was inevitable that he would like her. Saying that he did not like her. Damn, then she must be deliberately being sarcastic. Narcissistic and arrogant to this extent, she could be considered a weirdo. Even Ling Han was rendered speechless. When dealing with this kind of shameless person, he would always directly slap him across the face. The 9th layer of body refining tier was a bit difficult, but it was not impossible. Ling Han's gaze turned cold. Just as he was about to walk over, his eyes caught sight of a pretty figure walking into the martial arts field. Lu Yutong. This was a true beauty who could become the center of attention no matter where she went. Very quickly, everyone's gazes were also drawn over. Instantly, everyone revealed a stunned expression. So beautiful. Shen Ziyan was indeed a beauty, but compared to this person, she was a notch lower. Moreover, this woman had an indescribable grace, like an incomparably noble princess. In comparison, Shen Ziyan was overshadowed, like a village girl. At this moment, there was only one thought in everyone's mind. Who was she? Was she a fairy from the heavens? How could she be so beautiful and cold? Even thinking about her made people feel like they were blaspheming her. Under the dumbstruck gazes of the crowd, Lu Yutong had already walked past Ling Han. She did not even pause, and continued walking forward. This was very normal. If Lu Yutong had stopped, they would have been shocked instead. How could a mere piece of trash be acquainted with such a cold fairy? Shen Ziyan was under great pressure. The other's beauty was something that even she could not compare to. This made her go crazy with jealousy. The other was not just a little bit prettier than her. In terms of appearance, figure, and temperament, she completely crushed her. No matter how unwilling she was, she could only grit her teeth. Lu Yutong stopped in front of Shen Ziyan. With a wave of her hand, a slap landed on the other's face. Slap, clear and loud. You! Shen Ziyan was stunned by the slap, but she immediately flew into a rage. With a wave of her right hand, she also slapped Lu Yutong. But what was a 9th layer of body refining tier in front of a 9th layer of poly? Slap, Lu Yutong raised her hand and brought it down, giving Shen Ziyan another solid slap. After 2 slaps, Shen Ziyan's beautiful hair was in a mess, and her pretty face was swollen. She looked a little sad and beautiful, but her eyes were full of hatred, as if she wanted to eat someone up. With a fierce roar, she once again charged towards Lu Yutong to attack. But this was obviously a waste of effort. Slap, 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 she was slapped again and again. She was like a toy, unable to fight back. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. These two girls seemed to be around the same age. How could there be such a huge gap between their strengths? Furthermore, who exactly was this ice-cold beauty? Why did she randomly slap Shen Ziyan? What right do you have to be proud? Lu Yutong said coldly. Chapter 17. You can also be considered a genius in martial art? Lu Yutong said coldly, I'm 17 this year, the same as you, but I'm in the 9th layer of Pali, what about you? Pooh. Hearing this, everyone choked on their saliva. 9th layer of Pali, what kind of concept was that? Even the strongest warrior in Grey Cloud Town only had this kind of cultivation level. Shen Ziyan was indeed a genius. In the history of Grey Cloud Town, reaching the 9th layer of body refining tier at the age of 17 was rare. In 100 years, at most 2 or 3 such geniuses would appear, and all of them would shine brilliantly, becoming famous in the history of Rain Country. But compared to Lu Yutong, they weren't even worthy of carrying her shoes. A 17-year-old 9th layer of Pali, even in a large environment like Rain Country, how many could appear in 100 years? Lu Yutong didn't suppress herself anymore, and the aura of the 9th layer of Pali was released, letting everyone feel her strength. Shen Ziyan was the first to bear the brunt of it, and instantly lowered her head under this powerful aura. She didn't even have the right to look her in the eye. This was something that the proud her couldn't accept. She tried to raise her head to look at her, and her eyes were filled with fear, dejection, and confusion. Why did someone of her age, who was so beautiful that she felt inferior and talented enough to make her feel inferior, appear here? Why did she suddenly slap herself for no reason? You dare to look down on him? Lu Yutong said, turning around to point at Ling Han, then turned to look at Shen Ziyan, you're not worthy at all. What? She was standing up for Ling Han. Whether it was Shen Ziyan or the others, they couldn't believe it at all. This girl was magnificent, beautiful, and shockingly talented in martial art. It was already inconceivable that she was acquainted with Trash Ling, and now she was standing up for Ling Han. Who could accept this? Especially the boys, they were all jealous to death. Shen Ziyan gritted her teeth and her eyes were about to spit fire. She had shifted all her anger onto Ling Han. Because Lu Yutong was too strong, so strong that she couldn't even think of revenge. But Ling Han was different. In her eyes, a cultivation level of the 4th layer of body refining tier was not even worth mentioning. Furthermore, all of this was because of Ling Han. He was the one who had deliberately teased her, which was why she had mocked him. In the end, she had been slapped by Lu Yutong in front of everyone and made a fool of herself. But in reality, if she hadn't humiliated Ling Han would have left a long time ago. However, for a self-centered person like her, how could she possibly reflect on herself? Naturally, she blamed everything on others. She pointed at Ling Han and shrieked, why am I not worthy? If this guy isn't trash, then what is he? Trash? What trash have you seen that can break through 2 small tiers in one night? What trash can make a black-grade alchemist beg to follow him? Of course, Lu Yutong wouldn't tell her all of this. She only said, a woman with such shallow vision like you obviously wouldn't notice gold covered in dust and pearls hidden in darkness. You've already missed your chance, so what if I let you notice his brilliance? Speaking of which, she was still a little uncomfortable in her heart because Ling Han was actually moved by this kind of woman. Of course, she wouldn't admit that she was jealous. Ha 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 ha. Shen Ziyan laughed loudly and pointed at Ling Han, saying, he's gold, pearls. What kind of joke is this? He's trash, a complete and utter trash. In less than 3 months, all of you will only be able to look up to him. Lu Yutong said with absolute certainty. She didn't know why Ling Han had been so low-key in the past, but it was obvious that he was about to release his own light now. This light would definitely be so dazzling that even the sun would lose its color. Hearing this, everyone sneered. Though Ling Han had indeed defeated Cheng Hao, his true strength was only at the 4th layer of body refining tier, at most the 5th layer. This kind of cultivation couldn't be considered trash, but it was still very far from being a genius, not to mention that he was someone that everyone could only look up to. Lu Yutong's almond-shaped eyes widened, and the aura of the 9th layer of Pali vibrated. All the mocking laughter instantly stopped. Ling Han, how dare you! It was at this moment that an angry roar rang out, and 2 people walked quickly into the martial arts field. One was Cheng Hao, and the other was slightly older, and looked somewhat similar to him. That was Cheng Hao's older brother, Qing Xiang. He was currently 19 years old, and his cultivation level was at the 9th layer of body refining tier. They were both at the 9th layer of body refining tier, but one was 17 and the other was 19. Of course, their talent couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Of course, a 19-year-old at the 9th layer of body refining tier could still be considered a genius in Grey Cloud Town, but he wouldn't be as outstanding as Shenzian. Thump, 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 thump. Qing Xiang's footsteps were very heavy, showing his frightening anger. He stopped 3 meters in front of Ling Han, stretched out a finger, and said, "What shameful methods did you use?" Ling Han revealed a cold smile and said, "I was able to win because I used shameful methods." "Nonsense, otherwise how could a piece of trash like you defeat my little brother?" Qing Xiang said loudly. Unlike Ling Han, who had the reputation of being a piece of trash, if today's matter wasn't handled properly, the Qing family's reputation would definitely be greatly affected. Therefore, regardless of whether or not Ling Han had used any methods, he had to insist on saying that. Hearing the word trash, everyone's expressions became strange. Because Shenzian had said something similar before, and as a result, she had been slapped repeatedly by Lu Yutong. Right now, this expert at the 9th layer of Pali was still here. If you publicly insulted Ling Han, would you be able to get away with it? With Ling Han's experience, he naturally understood Qing Xiang's intentions at a glance. He didn't expose him, and said unhurriedly, "Oh, then how can I prove that I didn't use any shameful methods?" "Humph, you used shameful methods to bully my little brother. As his older brother, how can I pretend that I didn't notice? Since you have the guts, then come and fight me." Qing Xiang had obviously thought it through. Everyone couldn't help but silently curse him for being shameless. "You're at the 9th layer of body refining tier, but Ling Han looks like he's at the 4th or 5th layer of body refining tier. How can they be compared together?" However, as long as he beat up Ling Han, he would be able to greatly reduce the impact of Cheng Hao's humiliation, and also help Cheng Hao vent his anger. This was a very clever move, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Ling Han shook his head and laughed, saying, "You're at the 9th layer of body refining tier, and I'm only at the 4th layer. This doesn't seem very fair, does it? I don't mind if you find a helper to fight in your place." Qing Xiang laughed loudly. He naturally knew that Ling Han had the reputation of trash, and no one in the academy was willing to be friends with him, so how could he possibly find a helper? Moreover, even if he really did find a helper, so what? He was at the 9th layer of body refining tier, the strongest existence in the academy. Who did he need to fear? Everyone's expressions once again became strange, because Ling Han really did have a helper, and it was a super expert at the 9th layer of Pali who could instantly kill a 9th layer of body refining tier in 1 move. Aren't you courting death? Chapter 18. Lu Yutong walked up and said, "I'll fight in his place." Qing Xiang's attention had been on Ling Han the entire time, and it was only now that he noticed Lu Yutong's existence. When he saw this icy beauty's stunning appearance, he couldn't help but stare blankly. How could there be such a beautiful woman in this world? Wait a minute, she's going to fight in Ling Han's place. Qing Xiang immediately felt a strong sense of jealousy and displeasure. How could a good-for-nothing like Ling Han have such a beautiful woman? This was unfair and laughable. He hurriedly said, "Miss, You must be new here and have been deceived by that fellow's flowery words. He's the good-for-nothing of the Ling family. Everyone in the academy knows this. Lu Yutong's beautiful eyes immediately flashed with fury. She couldn't help but get angry when she heard others insult Ling Han. How could these people have the right to, don't? That was a woman just now, so I don't mind you fighting in my place. But this is a man, and a battle between men should be settled by men. Ling Han extended his hand and placed it on Lu Yutong's shoulder, shaking his head as he spoke. Seeing this scene, everyone was going crazy with jealousy, and even the girls were no exception. They were actually in such intimate contact with the goddess of their hearts. What made them even more indignant was that Lu Yutong actually didn't even have the slightest intention of resisting. Lu Yutong frowned. Qing Xiang was different from Cheng Hao. He was at the 9th level of body refinement realm, which was a whole 5 levels higher than Ling Han. She knew that Ling Han was very mysterious and had the ability to challenge those at a higher level than him, but the gap between them was just too big. From her point of view, Ling Han's chances of winning were infinitely close to zero. Don't worry, you should trust me more, Ling Han said with a smile. Then let's fight. Qing Xiang seized the opportunity and said. He didn't know how Ling Han bewitched Lu Yutong, but he believed that as long as he defeated Ling Han in public, this stunning beauty would naturally see Ling Han's true colors. Ling Han nodded towards Lu Yutong, and the icy beauty finally retreated. This little maid was quite interesting. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face as he looked at Qing Xiang with a serious expression. A gap of 5 whole layers. This was a huge, huge gap. Even if Lu Yutong were to be reduced to the 4th layer of body refining tier, she would only be able to hold a grudge against the opponent. The reason why Ling Han dared to accept this challenge was because he had mastered a technique called Lone Wolf's Blood. When he was injured and bled, he could burst out with battle power that surpassed his cultivation level. The heavier the injury, the stronger the battle power. If it was in his last life, Ling Han would be able to consume large amounts of alchemical pills to recover from his injuries, but now he didn't have such a panacea on hand. But it didn't matter, because he had obtained an even more powerful technique. Indestructible Heaven Scroll, come. Ling Han crooked his finger at him. His mood was calm. He had already let go of the glory of being a heaven-tier elite. Now he was only a small martial artist in the 4th layer of body refining tier, and everything had to start from scratch. Qing Xiang naturally wouldn't take Ling Han seriously. He very casually walked around Ling Han, a cold smile on his face. A small character in the 4th layer of body refining tier, he could suppress him with one hand. Brother, beat him. Cheng Hao couldn't help but shout. His face was currently in great pain, and he was forced to kneel and crawl like a dog in public, making a fool of himself. Naturally, he was filled with resentment towards Ling Han. There was one person who felt the same way as him, and that was Shenzian. She also hated Ling Han to the bone. Qing Xiang nodded, and said, Everyone, watch carefully. This is the consequence of going against my Qing family. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he suddenly threw a punch towards Ling Han. Ling Han humphed, and similarly clenched his fist, charging towards his opponent. What? Seeing this scene, everyone felt that Ling Han had gone mad. Wasn't that so? Going head-to-head against someone in the 9th layer of body refining tier was an extremely stupid way of doing things. Wasn't Ling Han very smart before? He used his frightening ability to predict and dispel Cheng Hao's attack in advance, beating the latter like a dog. But now, facing the even stronger Qing Xiang, he gave up on such a method of fighting. Did he think he wouldn't lose quickly enough? At this time, even Lu Yutong was about to lose confidence in Ling Han, because this kind of head-on confrontation was completely unrealistic. It was the truest reflection of cultivation level and power. Only Ling Han was filled with confidence in himself, so he naturally wouldn't purposely seek a beating. Come! Peng, the 2 fists collided. If it was slowed down 100 times, one could clearly feel that under the shock of the power, the skin on Ling Han's arm rippled like water, starting from his fist and extending all the way to his shoulder. Then, pa, 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 all the blood vessels ruptured, and his entire arm instantly became a bloody mess. The difference in power was really too great. Teng, 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 Ling Han retreated 7 steps before he could steady his stance. Ha 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 ha, trash will always be trash. Qing Xiang laughed coldly. Ever since Ling Han entered the academy, he and Cheng Hao had been the target of bullying. Now, he was delusional enough to think that he could turn things around. There was no expression on Ling Han's face. The indestructible heaven scroll was circulating, and the injury on his hand quickly healed. However, under the cover of blood, others wouldn't be able to tell. And under the injury, the lone wolf's blood also began to circulate, and his battle prowess increased greatly. 5th layer of body refining tier. Ling Han gave a light shout, and took the initiative to charge towards Qing Xiang. It's useless, trash Ling, you'll be trash your whole life. Qing Xiang laughed loudly, and raised a fist to meet his attack. Peng, the 5th layer of body refining tier, was obviously no match for someone in the 9th layer of body refining tier. Ling Han was once again forced back, and blood sprayed everywhere. The right arm that had just recovered was once again a bloody mess. Qing Xiang was slightly surprised, because he felt that his opponent's power had increased greatly, although it was still much weaker than his. As Ling Han circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, he also activated the lone wolf's blood. His eyes also emitted a light similar to that of a battle wolf, filled with killing intent. 6th layer of body refining tier. Adding injury to injury, Ling Han's battle prowess increased further. He roared, and once again attacked Qing Xiang. Even if Qing Xiang's power was extraordinary, under the gaze of Ling Han, he still felt fear. But he immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. This was a trash, and he actually felt fear because of a trash. What a joke. He wanted to defeat Ling Han with one strike, and severely injure him so that he wouldn't be able to get up again. Peng, 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 peng. The two of them continued to exchange blows, and it was naturally Ling Han who was at a complete disadvantage on the battlefield. Every time they exchanged blows, he would suffer heavy injuries. However, he would be able to immediately rally himself and launch a counterattack every time. His tenacity was unbelievable. Moreover, Ling Han's counterattack became fiercer and fiercer, and became stronger and stronger. Slowly, he was able to exchange blows with Qing Xiang. 7th layer of body refining tier. Qing Xiang knew very well that Ling Han's power had actually increased to the 7th layer of body refining tier. Thankfully, after reaching this level, Ling Han's power did not increase anymore, or else he would really be terrified. There was no helping it, the lone wolf's blood also had a limit, and could only increase Ling Han's power by 3 layers. However, the difference between the 7th layer of body refining tier and the 9th layer of body refining tier had already shrunk to 2 layers. Chapter 19. Ling Dongxing was already completely numb. He knew that his son was now a genius, but to be able to make an alchemist bow and scrape to him, and deliberately curry favor with him, this was still something that shocked him beyond compare. Previously, Zhu Dejun's attitude had been so arrogant, so high and mighty, and so condescending. He had asked many times before the other party finally agreed to attend the banquet, and the moment he arrived, he was already nitpicking and making things difficult for him, fully displaying the arrogance of an alchemist. But now, he really did not dare to believe that the other party would actually be so flattering. What exactly had happened in the few days that he had been gone that could cause his son to be so reborn? Ling clan head, I really deserve to die. Don't worry, I will have someone send the medicine over later, Zhu Dejun said cautiously. When he thought of his previous attitude towards Ling Dongxing, he could not help but feel his heart beat like a drum, and he was scared half to death. Ling Han tapped his finger on the table, and said, Did the Qing clan ask you to do this? Hee, young Master Han, I really did not know that Ling clan head was your father, and that was why I was deceived by the Qing clan. You must believe me, Zhu Dejun hurriedly explained. Ling Han smiled, and said, I believe you. Zhu Dejun was instantly overjoyed, but he heard Ling Han continue, with your personality, your greed is real. In a situation where you do not have enough benefits, how could you possibly work for the Qing clan? Tell me, what benefits did you receive from the Qing clan? This. Zhu Dejun hesitated, but when he saw Ling Han's sharp gaze, his heart instantly tightened, and he hurriedly said, 30,000 silver coins. The Qing clan is really generous. Ling Dongxing gave a humph. He was the clan head, so he was even more aware of the significance of 30,000 silver coins. The Qing clan was about the same as the Ling clan. Their income was astonishing, but their expenses were also extremely high. 30,000 silver coins would probably require 2 or 3 years to save up. For the Qing clan to be willing to take out such a large sum of money and stuff it into Zhu Dejun's hands, it meant that they were really serious. They definitely wanted to strangle the lifeline of the Ling clan. Just as Ling Han had said, Zhu Dejun was greedy. If they wanted him to resume supplying medicine to the Ling clan, then the benefits they had to take out would naturally be more than 30,000 silver coins. The problem was, the Ling clan had suffered a double blow previously, and their liquid funds had basically been used up. Where would they find 30,000 silver coins? For the Qing clan, this was only a small amount of blood, but for the Ling clan, it was definitely a deep wound. Thankfully, he had a good son. Ling Dongxing could not help but reveal a smile. The Qing clan had probably never imagined that the 30,000 silver coins they had taken out would all be for naught. 30,000 silver coins, that's quite a lot. Ling Han looked at Zhu Dejun with a smile that was not quite a smile. Alchemists are really valuable, needing so much money to bribe you. Young Master Han must be joking. Zhu Dejun wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead. He was not stupid, so he could naturally tell that Ling Han was being sarcastic. Because of you, our Ling clan has suffered heavy losses these few days, Ling Han said calmly. Zhu Dejun's whole body instantly trembled, but a thought flashed through his mind and he hurriedly said, although the main culprit is the Qing clan, I also have an undeniable responsibility. Thus, I have decided to donate the 30,000 silver coins to the Ling clan to make up for the Ling clan's losses. Ling Dongxing was astounded. A greedy person like Zhu Dejun was actually willing to give up the benefits that he had already taken. Just how much did he fear his son? Ling Han nodded, and said, I didn't make things difficult for you, did I? Of course not. Although his heart was in so much pain that it was bleeding, Zhu Dejun's face was filled with a smile, and he said embarrassedly, this is what I should do, it's a small token of my appreciation. That's good, Ling Han nodded, I need you to do something for me. Young Master Han, please speak, Zhu Dejun said, his voice filled with flattery. From tomorrow onwards, transfer the portion of alchemical pills distributed to the Qing clan to our Ling clan for sale, Ling Han said. When Ling Dongxing heard this, he was instantly overjoyed. Alchemical pills were one of the 2 main sources of income for the Ling clan, and now that they could double the number of alchemical pills, their profits would naturally double as well. Correspondingly, the income of the Qing clan would be reduced by half. As long as this continued for a few years, the overall power of the Qing clan would fall far behind that of the Ling clan, and the Ling clan would be able to completely defeat the Qing clan, becoming the #1 clan in Grey Cloud Town, and also the only great clan. Yes, no problem, Zhu Dejun said hurriedly. In any case, he only needed to make some adjustments, and would not suffer any losses himself. There's no need for that, I'll still give you some compensation, Ling Han said with a smile. Hee, young Master Han is really good at joking, Zhu Dejun laughed dryly. All right, there's nothing else for you to do. Go and do your work, Ling Han nodded, and dismissed Zhu Dejun. You should have a meal before you leave, Ling Dongxing said politely. After all, he was asking for help. How could Zhu Dejun dare to refuse? He hurriedly waved his hands, and said, "No need, no need, I'll go and do my proper business first." He raised his clasped hands towards Ling Han, then raised his clasped hands towards Ling Dongxing, and retreated all the way out the door. Han, wouldn't treating him this way produce the opposite of the desired result? Ling Dongxing asked. After all, Zhu Dejun was an alchemist. It was one thing to not give him any benefits, but one should not be so rude with their words, right? Don't worry, father. That guy only bullies the weak and fears the strong. If we give him some face, he'll be the one to bully us, Ling Han said with a smile. Ling Dongxing did not ask Ling Han why Zhu Dejun would be so afraid and respectful towards him. His son had already grown up, so of course he would have his own secrets. As his father, he only needed to support him. Moreover, he also needed to prepare the next part of his plan. It was time to switch from defense to offense. Alchemist Zhu. Seeing Zhu Dejun come out, Ling Zhongquan's grandson walked out from the shadows, and waved at him. This pair of grandfather and grandson did not leave after they left the shop. Instead, they waited there. In front of Ling Han, Zhu Dejun was like a pug, but in front of others, he immediately recovered his arrogant demeanor. He gave a humph and said, "What do you two want?" Alchemist Zhu, you, Mu Yun and Ling Han are brothers of the same clan. Could you make an exception and allow Mu Yun to continue learning the art of alchemy from you? Ling Zhongquan asked with a fawning smile. Yet Zhu Dejun smiled, and said, "Supervisor Ling, in this matter, I cannot make the decision. If you want your grandson to become an alchemist in the future, you have to first get young Master Han's approval. Otherwise, even if you find another alchemist, it would be useless. No one would dare to take your grandson as an apprentice." What? Ling Zhongquan and his grandson both wore expressions of disbelief. He was just a piece of trash, so how could he have such power? You two can choose not to believe me, but this has nothing to do with me, so don't drag me into this. Zhu Dejun waved his hand. However, I will still give you two a piece of advice. Do not go against young Master Han. Moreover, you two do not know how lucky you are. They were all members of the Ling clan, and there was no overnight enmity between a family. As long as they sincerely apologized to Ling Dongxing and his son, they would definitely receive benefits from them in the future. That was a man that even Grandmaster Zhu He Xian, had to treat with respect.